Hello, English learners. Welcome back to English in Minutes 2.0. I am Emma, your host for today. If you are new here, I would like to tell you that we upload new English learning videos regularly on our channel to help you improve your English faster, speak more naturally, and understand real English with greater confidence. In today's episode, we are going to focus on one of the most useful ways to improve your English fluency: listening to and practicing real English conversations from everyday life. This is a B2 to C1 Daily Life Real English Conversations Practice Masterclass, designed to help you understand how English is actually spoken in natural situations and how you can respond more confidently without translating every sentence in your head. Throughout this lesson, we will explore realistic conversations connected to daily routines, work, shopping, transportation, restaurants, appointments, social situations, making plans, solving everyday problems, sharing opinions, asking for clarification, making polite requests, and many other situations you may experience in real life. You will hear natural expressions, useful vocabulary, common sentence patterns, conversational responses, and practical phrases that fluent English speakers use every day. At the B2 and C1 levels, knowing grammar and vocabulary is not enough. You also need to understand natural sentence flow, connected ideas, common expressions, different ways of saying the same thing, and how people respond naturally during a conversation. That is exactly what we are going to practice today. As we move through the lesson, I will give you plenty of examples and practice exercises. You will have opportunities to listen carefully, repeat natural sentences, compare different ways of expressing the same idea, and practice longer responses that can help you become more comfortable speaking English in real-life situations. By the end of this masterclass, you should feel more confident understanding everyday English conversations, expressing your thoughts clearly, responding naturally, and using more advanced vocabulary and phrases without making your English sound unnecessarily complicated. Before we start the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon if you want more helpful English learning episodes like this. So, grab a pen and paper, stay focused, speak along with me whenever you can, and let's get started. One of the biggest differences between intermediate English and advanced English is not simply how many words you know, it is how naturally you can use the English you already know in real situations. At the B2 and C1 levels, you may understand grammar quite well, you may know thousands of words, and you may be able to read difficult texts, but everyday conversation can still feel surprisingly fast. Someone asks you a simple question, and suddenly you start thinking about grammar, word order, pronunciation, and whether your answer sounds natural. That hesitation can make speaking feel much harder than it really is. So today, our goal is to make everyday English feel more automatic. I want you to pay attention not only to individual words, but also to the way ideas are connected, the expressions people commonly use, and the small phrases that make conversations sound relaxed and natural. Let's begin with a very common daily situation, talking about your morning. Imagine that a coworker sees you and says, "You look tired. Rough morning?" A basic answer might be, "Yes, I am tired because I woke up late." That sentence is correct. But at a B2 or C1 level, you can make it sound more conversational. You could say, "Yeah, it's been a bit of a hectic morning. I overslept, rushed out of the house, and barely had time to grab coffee." Notice the expression, "It's been a bit of a hectic morning." This sounds more natural than simply saying, "My morning was busy." You also hear, "I overslept," which means you slept longer than you intended and barely had time. which means you had almost no time. These are extremely useful phrases in everyday conversation. Now, listen to another version. Honestly, my morning was all over the place. My alarm didn't go off, I couldn't find my keys, and then traffic was worse than usual. The expression all over the place can describe something that feels disorganized or chaotic. You might say, my schedule has been all over the place lately, or my thoughts were all over the place this morning. You would not normally use this expression in a highly formal report. But in everyday English, it is very common. Practice saying this complete response aloud. My morning was all over the place. I overslept, couldn't find my keys, and got stuck in traffic. Say it naturally as one connected thought instead of stopping after every few words. Now, imagine the other person responds, "That sounds stressful. Did you at least make it to work on time?" You could answer, "Just barely. I walked in about 2 minutes before my meeting started." Just barely is another very useful conversational expression. It means you succeeded, but only by a very small amount. You can say, I caught the train, but just barely, or we finished the project on time, but just barely. Listen to this short exchange. Did you catch your flight? Yeah, just barely. They were already boarding when I got to the gate. This type of short, natural response is exactly what you want to become comfortable using. Let's practice paraphrasing. If I say, I had almost no time to eat breakfast, you can express the same idea as, I barely had time to eat breakfast. If I say, the morning was very disorganized, you can say, the morning was all over the place. If I say, I arrived only a few minutes before the meeting, you can say, I made it just in time for the meeting. These small changes are important because advanced fluency often comes from having several natural ways to express the same idea. Now, let's move into another everyday situation, making plans with a friend. Imagine your friend says, Are you doing anything Friday night? A direct answer might be, No, I am free. That is perfectly understandable, but natural English gives you many other options. You could say, I don't think so. What did you have in mind? This is a very useful phrase. What did you have in mind means, what are you thinking about doing? It sounds friendly and natural. You can use it when someone suggests making plans but has not yet explained the details. Your friend might say, I was thinking we could grab dinner somewhere downtown. You could respond, I'd be up for that. Do you have anywhere specific in mind? The phrase I'd be up for that means I would be interested in doing that. You can say, I'd be up for a movie. I'd be up for trying that new restaurant. Or, I'd be up for going for a walk later. This phrase is casual, natural, and very useful in social situations. Now, imagine you are interested, but you are not completely sure whether you are available. You might say, That sounds good. Let me double-check my schedule and get back to you. Double-check means to check something again to make sure it is correct. Get back to you means respond later after you have more information. These are expressions you will hear constantly in daily life and at work. For example, let me check with my manager and get back to you. Or, I'm not sure what time they close. Let me double-check. Practice the full response. That sounds good. Let me double-check my schedule and get back to you later today. Now, say it again. But imagine you are actually speaking to a friend. Try not to pronounce every word too carefully. Focus on the rhythm of the entire sentence. Fluency does not mean speaking as fast as possible. It means allowing words and phrases to connect naturally while keeping your message clear. Suppose your friend sends you a message later and says, So, are we still on for Friday? The phrase, are we still on, means, are our plans still happening? You might answer, yes, absolutely. I should be free around 7. Or you could say, yep, we're still on. I might be running a little late, though. The expression running late means you are delayed and may arrive later than planned. It is much more natural than saying, I will be late because I am delayed. Here is another realistic exchange. Are we still on for dinner? Yeah, definitely. I may be about 15 minutes late, though. No worries. Just text me when you're on your way. Will do. Notice the phrase, will do. It is a short, natural way of saying, I will do that. You may hear it after a request or instruction. Send me the address when you have a chance. Will do. Call me when you arrive. Will do. It is simple, but it can make your conversation sound more natural. Now, let's talk about changing plans, because this happens constantly in everyday life. Imagine you have agreed to meet someone, but something comes up. You might say, I hate to do this, but could we push dinner back to 8? The phrase, push something back, means move it to a later time. You could also say, could we move it back to 8? If you want to change the day completely. You might say, something came up. Would you mind if we rescheduled for Saturday? Something came up means an unexpected situation occurred. You do not always have to explain every detail. It is a polite and common phrase. Listen carefully to this natural message. Hey, I hate to change plans at the last minute, but something came up at work. Any chance we could push dinner back by an hour? This type of wording sounds considerate because you acknowledge that you are causing inconvenience. At the last minute means very close to the planned time. You might say, they canceled the meeting at the last minute, or I had to change my travel plans at the last minute. Now, practice responding when someone changes plans. You could say, no problem, 8 works for me. You could also say, that's fine, I can make 8 work. The expression make it work means find a way for something to be possible. For example, my schedule is pretty full, but I think I can make Thursday work. Or, that time is not ideal, but I can make it work. This is useful in both personal and professional conversations. Let's move into another important area, talking about work and daily responsibilities. Imagine a coworker asks, how's your day going? Instead of always saying, good, you can give a more natural response. You might say, pretty good, just trying to catch up on a few things. Catch up on means complete work or tasks that you are behind on. You can catch up on emails, catch up on paperwork, catch up on sleep, or even catch up on a television series. For example, I spent most of the morning catching up on emails after being out of the office yesterday. Another response might be, it's been busy, but manageable. The word manageable means difficult or busy, but still under control. This is a useful B2 to C1 word because it allows you to express a more precise meaning than simply saying, fine. You can say, the workload is heavy, but manageable, or the commute is long, but manageable. Practice this response. It's been a pretty busy day, but so far it's manageable. Suppose your coworker asks, are you swamped today? The word swamped is an informal way to say extremely busy. You could answer, a little, I've got several deadlines coming up, so I'm trying to stay on top of everything. Stay on top of something means remain informed, organized, or in control of it. You can say, I'm trying to stay on top of my emails. It's hard to stay on top of all these appointments. Or, I make a list every morning to stay on top of my tasks. Now, compare these two sentences. I have a lot of work. I'm pretty swamped today. Both communicate a similar idea, but the second sounds much more conversational. Compare these as well. I want to control my responsibilities. I'm trying to stay on top of everything. The second is what you are more likely to hear in natural English. Here is a longer workplace example. Imagine someone asks, "Do you have a minute?" You answer, "Sure. What's up?" What's up? In this context does not simply mean, "How are you?" It means, "What do you need?" or "What is the situation?" Your coworker says, "I'm putting together the report for tomorrow and I wanted to run something by you." The phrase "run something by someone" means explain an idea to them in order to get their opinion. For example, "Can I run an idea by you?" Or, "I wanted to run these numbers by you before I sent them to the client." You might respond, "Of course, go ahead." Your coworker explains the idea, and you could say, "That makes sense. The only thing I'd suggest is making the conclusion a little more concise." Notice how polite and professional this sounds. Instead of saying, "Your conclusion is too long," you say, "The only thing I'd suggest is making the conclusion a little more concise." At higher levels of English, learning how to soften your opinions is just as important as learning vocabulary. Let's practice another useful expression. I see where you're coming from. This means, I understand your perspective, even if you do not fully agree with it. Imagine someone says, "I think we should postpone the project until next month." You might answer, "I see where you're coming from, but I'm not sure postponing it is our best option." This is an excellent phrase for disagreements because it shows that you have listened before presenting another opinion. You can also say, "I get what you mean, but I look at it a little differently." This is slightly more casual. Practice saying, "I see where you're coming from, but I think there may be another way to handle it." This type of sentence is extremely useful in workplace discussions, family conversations, and any situation where people have different opinions. Now, imagine a colleague gives you a suggestion and you need time to consider it. Instead of immediately agreeing or disagreeing, you can say, "That's worth thinking about." Or, "Let me give that some thought." Give something some thought means consider it carefully. You might say, "Let me give it some thought and I'll let you know tomorrow." This is useful when you want to avoid making an immediate decision. Let's practice with a short situation. Someone says, "Would you be interested in taking on another project next month?" You could respond, "Possibly. Let me give it some thought and check what else I have coming up." Notice what else I have coming up. This refers to future obligations, meetings, deadlines, or events. You could also say, "I have a few deadlines coming up next week." Now, I want you to practice giving a natural answer to a common question. How have things been lately? A basic answer is, "Things have been good." A stronger B2 or C1 answer might be, "Pretty good overall. Work has been keeping me busy, but I've been trying to make more time for myself in the evenings." Another answer could be, "It's been a busy couple of weeks. Nothing too crazy, but I've had a lot going on." The expression, "I've had a lot going on," means there have been many things happening in your life. Try repeating this complete response. It's been a busy couple of weeks. I've had a lot going on at work, but things are starting to settle down now. Settle down in this context means become calmer or less busy. You could say, "Things should settle down after the holidays," or "Work was hectic last week, but it has settled down a little." Now, take the same idea and make it more positive. "I've been pretty busy lately, but in a good way. I've been working on a few new projects, getting back into a regular exercise routine, and trying to be more organized." Notice how this answer gives several connected details without becoming complicated. That is something advanced learners should practice. Instead of answering everyday questions with one sentence, try adding one or two relevant details. This helps conversations continue naturally. Here is your practice. Imagine someone asks, "What have you been up to lately?" A natural answer could be, "Not too much. Honestly, I've mostly been focused on work. but I've also been trying to get out more on the weekends. Another answer could be, quite a bit. Actually, I've been taking a class after work, so that has been keeping me pretty busy. What have you been up to is a very common way to ask what someone has been doing recently. Now, say this response slowly and clearly. I've had quite a bit going on lately, but overall things are going well. I'm just trying to stay organized and take things one day at a time. The phrase take things one day at a time means focus on the present rather than worrying too much about everything ahead. It is a useful expression in stressful or busy situations. As you continue practicing, remember that advanced everyday English is not about forcing difficult vocabulary into every sentence. Natural speakers often use simple words combined in flexible and idiomatic ways. Expressions such as, something came up, I'll get back to you, I'm trying to stay on top of things, I see where you're coming from, and let me give it some thought, are not extremely complicated, but they are powerful because they appear constantly in real conversations. Your goal is to make these phrases available automatically so that you can use them without translating from your first language. Before we move forward, practice this final sequence aloud. How's your week been? Pretty busy. To be honest, I've been trying to catch up on work, and I have a couple of deadlines coming up. Sounds like you've got a lot going on. A little, but it's manageable. I'm just taking things one day at a time. Repeat that exchange again, and this time focus on sounding relaxed. Imagine you are not performing English for a test. You are simply talking to another person. That shift in mindset is important because real fluency grows when English begins to feel like communication rather than an exercise. Now, let's move into another daily life situation that requires natural, flexible English, shopping and handling small problems in stores. Imagine you are looking for a particular item, but you cannot find it. You walk up to an employee and say, "Excuse me, could you point me in the right direction? I'm looking for the kitchen storage containers." The phrase "point me in the right direction" is a natural way to ask for guidance. It does not always mean physically pointing. It can simply mean helping you figure out where something is. You could also use it in other situations, such as, "I'm trying to find the customer service desk. Could you point me in the right direction?" Or, "I'm not sure who handles billing issues. Could you point me in the right direction?" The employee might answer, "Sure, they should be in aisle 12, near the back." You could respond, "Great, thanks, I appreciate it." If you get there and the item is not available, you might return and say, "I checked aisle 12, but it looks like you're out of stock. Do you happen to know when you'll be getting more in?" The phrase "out of stock" means the store does not currently have that item available. "Do you happen to know" is a soft, polite way to ask for information. Instead of saying, "When will you have more?" you can say, "Do you happen to know when you'll be getting more in?" It sounds less demanding and more conversational. The employee might say, "I'm not completely sure, but I can check for you." You could answer, "That would be great, thank you." After checking, the employee says, "It looks like we should have another shipment on Thursday." You might say, "Perfect, I'll check back then." Check back means return or contact someone again later to see whether anything has changed. You might also hear, "Check back with me tomorrow," or "I'll check back next week and see if there are any openings." Now, imagine you bought something yesterday, but when you got home, you noticed a problem. You return to the store and say, "Hi, I bought this yesterday, but when I opened the box, I noticed one of the pieces was damaged. I was wondering if I could exchange it." The expression, "I was wondering if I could," is one of the most useful polite request patterns in English. It sounds softer than, "I want to exchange this." or can I exchange this? You can use it in many situations. I was wondering if I could change my appointment. I was wondering if you could help me with something. Or, I was wondering if there's any chance of getting a later checkout. The employee may ask, do you still have the receipt? You could say, yes, I have it right here. If you do not, you might say, unfortunately, I don't have the receipt anymore, but I paid by card. Is there any way you can look up the purchase? Look up means search for information. Stores may look up a purchase, you may look up a phone number, or you may look up information online. Notice how many everyday English expressions are short verb combinations. These are often more useful in conversation than long, formal vocabulary. Suppose the employee says, I can try, give me just a second. You can simply respond, sure, no problem. After checking, they say, I found the transaction, so we can exchange it for you. You might say, that's perfect. Thank you for your help. Now, imagine the replacement is also unavailable. The employee says, unfortunately, we don't have another one in the same size. You could reply, that's okay. In that case, could I just get a refund? The phrase in that case is useful when your decision changes because of new information. You can say, if they're closed, in that case, let's go somewhere else. Or, if you can't make it Friday, in that case. Saturday works for me. Let's practice another common shopping situation. Comparing products. Imagine you are shopping for headphones and ask, what's the main difference between these two models? The salesperson explains the features. You could say, so if I understand correctly, this one has better battery life, but the other one has better sound quality. Is that right? The phrase, if I understand correctly, is excellent when you want to confirm information. It shows that you are listening carefully and gives the other person a chance to correct you. You could use it in a store, at work, during an appointment, or on the phone. You may also say, I'm leaning toward this one, but I'm still not completely sure. Lean toward means prefer one option slightly more than another without having made a final decision. For example, I'm leaning toward taking the earlier flight, or we're leaning toward the apartment closer to downtown. This is a very useful phrase for decisions. Practice saying, I'm leaning toward the less expensive option, but I want to think about it for a few minutes. Let's shift to restaurants and ordering food. These conversations seem simple, but there are many ways to sound more natural and confident. Imagine a server asks, are you ready to order? You might say, I think so. I'll go with the grilled chicken, and could I get the salad instead of the fries? The expression I'll go with is a very common way to choose something. You can say, I'll go with the pasta. I think I'll go with the blue one. Or, let's go with the earlier appointment. If you need more time, you could say, we're almost ready. Could we have another minute? Or, I'm still deciding between two things. Could you give me another minute? Both sound natural and polite. Now, suppose you have a dietary question. You could ask, does this come with any kind of cream sauce? Or, is there any dairy in this dish? If the server is not sure, they may say, let me check with the kitchen. You can respond, sure, thank you, I appreciate it. Now, imagine your food arrives, but something is wrong. Perhaps you ordered your steak medium, but it is well done. You could say, excuse me. I'm sorry, but I ordered this medium, and it seems to be well done. Notice that you do not need to sound angry to communicate clearly. You could continue, would it be possible to have it remade? This is polite but direct. Another version is, I hate to send it back. But this isn't quite what I ordered. The phrase isn't quite what I ordered softens the complaint slightly while still making the problem clear. If the server apologizes and says, I'm so sorry about that. I'll take care of it right away. You could say, no problem. Thank you. The expression take care of it means handle or resolve the issue. You will hear this constantly in customer service. I'll take care of the bill. Don't worry about the reservation. I'll take care of it. Or, we had an issue with the order, but customer service took care of it. Let's practice restaurant conversation with a longer response. Imagine someone asks you later, how was that new restaurant? A basic answer could be, it was good. But at B2 or C1 level, you can say, overall, I really liked it. The food was excellent, and the service was friendly. It was a little noisier than I expected, but I definitely go back. Notice the phrase overall. This allows you to give a general opinion while also mentioning a small negative point. You might say, overall, the experience was positive. Or, overall, I think it was worth the money. Another useful phrase is, live up to expectations. Imagine someone asks, did the restaurant live up to the hype? The word hype refers to a lot of excitement or publicity around something. You might answer, for the most part, yes. The food definitely lived up to expectations. Although the wait was longer than I expected. Live up to expectations means be as good as you expected. You can use this for movies, vacations, restaurants, products, events, and many other experiences. Now, let's move into transportation and getting around. Imagine you are driving somewhere and call a friend. You say, I'm on my way, but traffic is backed up on the highway, so I may be a little late. Backed up means congested, especially traffic. You might say, traffic is backed up for miles, or there was an accident, and everything was backed up. Your friend could respond, no worries, take your time and drive safely. Take your time means there is no need to rush. Suppose you are using public transportation and ask someone, does this train go all the way downtown, or do I need to transfer? To transfer means change from one train, bus, or line to another. The person says, you'll need to transfer at Central Station. You might respond, got it. Is it pretty straightforward? The word straightforward means simple and easy to understand or do. You could say, the application process is pretty straightforward. Or, the directions are straightforward once you get there. If you miss your stop, you might say, I got distracted and completely missed my stop. Get distracted means your attention moves away from what you should be focusing on. Another person might say, no big deal, just get off at the next stop and take the train back one station. No big deal is a casual way to say something is not a serious problem. Practice saying, I missed my stop, but it's no big deal. I'll just get off at the next station. Now, imagine your car will not start in a parking lot. You call a friend and say, I'm having some trouble with my car. It won't start, and I'm not sure what's wrong. Your friend may ask, do you think the battery is dead? You could say, that's my guess. The lights are coming on, but the engine isn't turning over. Even if you are not interested in car vocabulary, phrases like, that's my guess, are useful everywhere. That's my guess means that is what you think is probably true, but you are not certain. You might then call roadside assistance and say, hi, my car won't start, and I'm in the parking lot at a grocery store on Oak Street. I think I may need a jump start. They may ask for more details. If you are not sure of the exact address, you can say, I don't know the exact street number, but I'm right across from the post office. The expression right across from means directly opposite something. Giving clear location information is another important daily life skill. Now, let's practice explaining a minor inconvenience in natural English. Imagine you arrive at work late and someone asks, everything okay? You can say, yeah, everything's fine. My car wouldn't start this morning, so I had to wait for roadside assistance. It threw off my whole schedule. The phrase throw off means disrupt or disturb a plan, routine, or rhythm. For example, that unexpected meeting threw off my afternoon. Or, traveling across time zones always throws off my sleep schedule. Here is another useful expression: set me back. If a problem causes a delay, you can say, the car trouble set me back about 40 minutes. This means it delayed you by 40 minutes. You could say, the technical issue set us back a few hours. Or, missing the train set me back 20 minutes. Practice the full response. My car wouldn't start this morning, and it set me back almost an hour. But everything is fine now. Let's move into appointments and services. Imagine you call a doctor's office and say, "Hi, I'm calling to see if I can reschedule an appointment I have for Wednesday afternoon." The receptionist asks, "What day would work better for you?" You could say, "Do you have anything available Friday morning?" If there is nothing available, the receptionist may say, "The earliest opening I have is Monday at 10:30. An opening is an available appointment time. You could respond, "Monday at 10:30 should work. Let's go ahead and do that." Go ahead and is very common in spoken English when you decide to proceed with something. You might say, "Let's go ahead and book it." You can go ahead and send the email, or "I'll go ahead and take care of that today." It often makes instructions or decisions sound smoother and more conversational. Suppose you arrive for an appointment and there is a delay. The receptionist says, "The doctor is running about 20 minutes behind." Running behind means being later than the planned schedule. You might respond, "That's okay. Thanks for letting me know." If you are in a hurry, you could say, "I understand. Do you have a rough idea of how long the wait might be?" A rough idea means an approximate estimate. You can use this phrase in many situations. Do you have a rough idea of how much it will cost? Can you give me a rough idea of when the project will be finished? Now, imagine you need to explain a problem during the appointment. You could say, "I've been having some discomfort in my shoulder for the past couple of weeks. It's not constant, but it seems to get worse when I'm sitting at my desk for a long time." Notice how useful "seems to" is when you are not completely certain. You can say, "It seems to happen mostly in the evening," or "The problem seems to be getting worse." Being able to describe patterns, frequency, and uncertainty clearly is an important part of advanced everyday communication. Let's move to phone calls and customer service, because these situations often feel challenging even for strong learners. Imagine you call your internet provider and say, "Hi, I'm calling because my internet connection has been dropping on and off for the past few days." On and off means intermittently, sometimes working and sometimes not working. You can say, "It has been raining on and off all afternoon." Or, "I've been having headaches on and off this week." The representative says, "I'm sorry to hear that. Let me pull up your account." To pull up information means access or display it, usually on a computer. After checking, they might ask, "Have you tried restarting your router?" You say, "Yes, I've restarted it several times, but the problem keeps coming back." Keeps coming back means the problem repeatedly returns after temporarily disappearing. Suppose they ask you to try another step. You follow the instructions, and then they say, "How does it look now?" You might respond, "It seems to be working at the moment," but that usually happens for a while before it cuts out again. Cut out means suddenly stop working, especially a connection, sound, or electrical device. You could say, "The audio keeps cutting out," or "My phone call cut out when I went through the tunnel." If the issue cannot be fixed remotely, the representative may say, "We'll need to send a technician out." You can ask, What's the earliest appointment you have available? They say, we have a window between noon and 4 on Thursday. A window in this context is a range of time during which someone may arrive. You could respond, Thursday works, but is there any way I could get a narrower time window? This is a useful way to negotiate politely. Now, let's practice summarizing the problem clearly. Imagine you need to explain it to another person. You could say, my internet has been cutting out on and off for several days. I called customer service, and they tried to troubleshoot it remotely, but the issue kept coming back. So they scheduled a technician for Thursday. The verb troubleshoot means identify and try to solve a technical problem. It is useful in both professional and everyday situations. Now, I want you to notice something important about all of these conversations. Natural English speakers often organize explanations around a sequence: what happened, what you tried, what the result was, and what happens next. This structure can help you speak more fluently because you do not have to invent everything at once. For example, my internet stopped working. I restarted the router a few times, but that didn't help. I called the provider, and now they're sending someone tomorrow. That is clear, natural, and easy to follow. Let's practice this structure with another example. My order arrived late. I contacted the company, and they said there had been a shipping delay. They refunded the delivery fee and told me the package should arrive tomorrow. Now another one. I missed my dentist appointment because traffic was much worse than expected. I called the office, explained what happened, and they were able to reschedule me for next week. Try creating this kind of 4-step explanation whenever you describe a daily problem. Now, imagine someone asks, how did everything work out with your internet? The phrase work out can mean end successfully or reach a final result. You could say, it worked out fine. The technician replaced the router, and I haven't had any problems since. Or perhaps the problem is not fully solved. You could say, it's better, but I'm not convinced the issue is completely fixed yet. I'm not convinced means you still have doubts. This is a useful phrase for expressing uncertainty at an advanced level. You could also say, so far, so good. This means everything has been fine up to this point, although you do not know what will happen later. For example, how's the new job going? So far, so good. Did the repair fix the problem? So far, so good. It hasn't happened again. Practice saying, the connection has been stable since yesterday. So far, so good. Now, let's continue with a longer speaking exercise. Imagine you had a difficult but manageable day. You could say, today was a little more hectic than I expected. I had to return something at the store before work, and the item I wanted to exchange was out of stock, so I ended up getting a refund. Then traffic was backed up on my way to the office, which set me back about 20 minutes. Later, my internet started cutting out during an important call, so I had to contact customer support. They couldn't completely solve the problem over the phone, but they scheduled a technician for tomorrow. None of these things was a huge problem by itself, but together, they definitely threw off my day. Now, listen to the same story in a slightly more relaxed style. It was just one of those days where little things kept going wrong. First, I had trouble with a return at the store. Then I got stuck in traffic. After that, my internet started acting up during a call. Everything eventually worked out, but it felt like I was dealing with one thing after another. The expression, one thing after another, describes a series of events that happen continuously, often problems. Acting up means behaving badly or not working properly. You might say, my laptop has been acting up lately, or my knee has been acting up again. Practice this final sentence aloud. It was one of those days where one thing after another kept going wrong, but I managed to deal with everything and get through it. Get through it means successfully survive or complete a difficult situation. You can use it for a stressful day, a difficult project, an exam, or even a challenging period of life. The more you practice these expressions inside complete situations, the easier it becomes to use them naturally when you actually need them. Another important part of real daily English is knowing how to handle conversations when you need something from another person. At the B2 and C1 levels, it is not enough to know how to make a grammatically correct request. You also want to sound polite, natural, and appropriate for the situation. Imagine you are at work and need a coworker to send you a file. You could simply say, "Send me the file," but that may sound too direct depending on your relationship. A more natural version would be, "When you get a chance, could you send me the updated file?" The phrase, "when you get a chance," means when you have some available time. It shows that you understand the other person may be busy. You can say, "When you get a chance, could you take a look at this?" Or, "Give me a call when you get a chance." Another useful phrase is, "whenever you have a minute." For example, "Whenever you have a minute, I'd like to run something by you." This sounds friendly and professional. Notice how we are combining expressions you have already practiced. "Whenever you have a minute" softens the request. And "run something by you" means ask for someone's opinion. Natural English becomes much easier when you start combining useful chunks instead of building every sentence word by word. Imagine your coworker responds, "Sure, I'm tied up at the moment, but I can look at it after lunch." Tied up is a common way to say busy or occupied. You might hear, "I'm a little tied up right now. Can I call you back?" Or, "She's tied up in a meeting." If someone says this to you, a natural response is, "No problem, whenever you have time." You could also say, "That's fine, it's not urgent." The word urgent is useful when you want to communicate whether something needs immediate attention. Now, suppose the request is more urgent. You might say, "I know you're busy, but is there any chance you could send it before noon? I need it for a meeting this afternoon." "Is there any chance you could" is another polite structure. It allows you to ask for something important without sounding too demanding. You could say, "Is there any chance we could move the meeting to tomorrow?" Or, "Is there any chance you could take a quick look at this before you leave?" Let's practice refusing a request politely, because this can be difficult for English learners. Imagine someone asks, "Could you help me with this report today?" You are already very busy. Instead of saying, "No, I can't," you could say, "I'd like to help, but I'm pretty swamped today. I could take a look at it tomorrow morning if that works." This response does three things. It shows willingness, explains the limitation, and offers an alternative. This structure is very useful in professional and personal situations. Another version is, "I don't think I'll be able to get to it today, but I should have some time first thing tomorrow." Get to something means have enough time to deal with or complete it. For example, "I haven't gotten to those emails yet," or "I'll get to that after lunch." First thing tomorrow means very early in the day, before other tasks. You might say, "I'll call them first thing in the morning." Now, let's move into conversations at home. Because daily life English often involves small decisions, chores, and responsibilities. Imagine you live with a roommate or family member and they ask, "Did you get a chance to take the trash out?" You might answer, "Not yet. I completely forgot, but I'll take care of it now." Take care of it, again, means handle the task or problem. Another person might say, "No rush. I just wanted to make sure we didn't forget." No rush means it does not need to happen immediately. Suppose you want someone to help with a household task. You could say, "Would you mind loading the dishwasher while I clean up the kitchen?" "Would you mind" is a polite way to ask someone to do something. a natural positive response is, sure, no problem, not yes. Because saying yes, I mind, technically means you do have a problem with it. In daily conversation, people often avoid the confusion by responding with, of course, sure, or not at all. Imagine the other person says, I can do that. Do you want me to wipe down the counters too? Wipe down means clean a surface by wiping it. You could respond, that would be great. I'm trying to get everything done before everyone gets here. The phrase, get everything done, is a very common way to talk about completing several tasks. Now, suppose you have guests coming over. Someone asks, are we all set for tonight? All set means completely ready. You could say, almost. I just need to pick up a few things from the store and straighten up the living room. Straighten up means make a room cleaner and more organized. Usually quickly. You might say, give me 10 minutes to straighten up before they arrive. Another useful phrase is, good to go. This also means ready. Imagine you are preparing to leave the house. Someone asks, are you ready? You could say, yep, I'm good to go. I just need to grab my jacket. Or, after checking a document, someone might say, everything looks good. You're good to go. Practice saying, I'm almost good to go. I just need to finish one thing. Let's move into making everyday decisions. Imagine you and a friend are deciding where to eat. Your friend says, I don't really have a preference. I'm good with whatever. I'm good with whatever means any option is acceptable to you. You might respond, okay, in that case, how about that Mexican place we went to last month? Your friend says, works for me. Works for me is a short and natural way of saying an idea or plan is acceptable. Now, imagine your friend is not enthusiastic. They say, I'm not really in the mood for Mexican tonight. Be in the mood for means feel like having or doing something. You can say, I'm in the mood for pizza. I'm not in the mood to go out. Or, I'm in the mood for something light. You might then say, fair enough. What are you in the mood for? Fair enough means you accept the other person's point or preference. Suppose they answer, maybe something casual. I don't feel like going anywhere too crowded. You could say, how about the little Italian place around the corner? It's usually pretty quiet. They respond, yeah, that sounds better. Let's do that. Notice how flexible daily conversations are. You do not need complicated vocabulary. You need smooth ways to react, suggest, disagree, change direction, and make a decision. Now, let's practice talking about preferences in a more advanced way. Instead of saying, I like quiet restaurants, you could say, I tend to prefer places where you can actually have a conversation. Tend to means something is generally true, although not always. You can say, I tend to wake up early. I tend to avoid driving during rush hour. Or, I tend to order the same thing every time. This phrase is very useful because real preferences are often not absolute. Another phrase is, I'm not particularly picky. Picky means difficult to please or very selective. You might say, I'm not particularly picky when it comes to food. Or, he's pretty picky about coffee. When it comes to means regarding a particular subject. For example, when it comes to travel, I prefer planning ahead. Or, when it comes to clothes, I usually choose comfort over style. Practice this response. When it comes to restaurants, I'm not particularly picky. I tend to prefer quieter places, but I'm usually happy to try something new. This kind of response sounds much more developed than simply saying, I like quiet restaurants. Now, let's move into conversations about money and everyday expenses. Imagine a friend says, have you noticed how expensive groceries have gotten? You might respond, definitely. I feel like I'm spending more every week even though I'm buying pretty much the same things. The phrase, I feel like, is often used to express an impression, not necessarily an emotion. For example, I feel like traffic has been worse lately, or I feel like this week went by really quickly. Your friend might say, I've been trying to cut back on eating out. Cut back on means reduce the amount of something. You can cut back on spending, sugar, coffee, screen time, or unnecessary expenses. You could respond, same here. I've been cooking at home more and trying to be more careful about impulse purchases. An impulse purchase is something you buy suddenly without planning to. Another useful expression is add up. Small expenses can add up, meaning they gradually become a large total. For example, coffee every morning doesn't seem expensive, but it really adds up over a month. Or, all those subscription services add up. Practice saying, I've been trying to cut back on small expenses because they really start to add up. Imagine someone asks, are you saving for anything in particular? You might say, I'm trying to put some money aside for a trip later this year. Put money aside means save money for the future. You could also say, I'm putting a little aside every month. Another phrase is set aside. You can set aside money, time, or resources. I try to set aside a little money for unexpected expenses. Now, let's talk about unexpected expenses. Imagine your car needs a repair. You tell a friend, I just found out my car needs new brakes, which is not exactly what I wanted to spend money on this month. Your friend might say, that's frustrating. Is it going to be expensive? You respond, probably. I'm waiting for the mechanic to give me an estimate. An estimate is an approximate price or amount. Later you might say, it ended up costing more than I expected. End up is an extremely useful phrase in storytelling. It refers to the final result of a situation, often when it is different from what you expected. We ended up staying home because it started raining. I went to the store for one thing and ended up buying 5. The repair ended up taking 2 days. Practice this sentence. I thought it would be a quick repair, but it ended up being more complicated than they expected. Now, another example. We planned to have dinner downtown, but everything was crowded, so we ended up eating somewhere closer to home. Try to become comfortable using end up because it appears constantly in natural conversations. Now, let's move into discussing plans for the weekend. Imagine someone asks, do you have anything going on this weekend? You could say, nothing major. I have a few errands to run Saturday morning, but other than that, I'm keeping it pretty open. Run errands means go out to complete small practical tasks, such as going to the bank, grocery store, pharmacy, or post office. Keep it open means avoid making too many fixed plans. Another response could be, I haven't made any definite plans yet. I'm kind of playing it by ear. Play it by ear means decide what to do based on the situation rather than making a detailed plan in advance. This is a very common expression. For example, we don't know how long the meeting will take, so let's just play it by ear. Or, I might go hiking Sunday, but I'm playing it by ear depending on the weather. Suppose your friend says, a few of us are getting together Saturday afternoon if you want to join. You might say, that sounds fun. I can't promise anything yet, but keep me posted. Keep me posted means continue giving me updates or information. Another person might say, sure, I'll let you know once we figure out the details. Figure out means solve, understand, or decide something. You could respond, perfect. If I can make it, I'll come by for a while. Come by means visit a place, usually for a relatively short time. You might say, come by whenever you're free. or I'm going to come by after work. If you are talking about someone else's home, you can also say, stop by. I might stop by later. Let's practice turning down a social invitation politely. Someone says, we're going out Friday night. Want to come? You could answer, thanks for inviting me, but I think I'm going to take it easy Friday. It's been a long week. Take it easy can mean relax and avoid doing too much. You might say, I'm just going to stay home and take it easy tonight. Another natural response is, I'm going to pass this time, but definitely let me know next time. Pass means decline an opportunity or invitation. It is casual and common. You might say, thanks, but I'll pass. Although this shorter version can sound a little direct depending on your tone. A warmer version is, I think I'll pass this time, but thanks for thinking of me. Now, imagine you have been very busy, and someone asks why you are staying home. You might say, I feel like I've been running around all week, so I really need a quiet night. Running around means being very busy going from place to place or doing many tasks. You could say, I spent the whole morning running around doing errands. Let's move into conversations about health and daily habits without getting too formal. Imagine someone asks, have you been sleeping any better? You could respond, a little. I've been trying to get into a better routine and stop looking at my phone so late at night. Get into a routine means establish a regular pattern. You could also say, I'm trying to get back into a regular exercise routine. Get back into means start doing something again after a break. Suppose someone says, I've been meaning to start exercising again. I've been meaning to means you have intended to do something but have not done it yet. This phrase is incredibly useful. I've been meaning to call you. I've been meaning to clean out my closet. Or, I've been meaning to try that restaurant. It often implies that you have delayed something. You could respond, same. I keep telling myself I'll start, but something always gets in the way. Get in the way means prevent something from happening or make it difficult. You can say, work keeps getting in the way of my plans. Or, I wanted to go for a walk, but the rain got in the way. Now, imagine you are finally building a healthier routine. You might say, I'm trying not to overdo it. I'm starting with 3 workouts a week and seeing how that goes. Overdo it means do too much of something. You can overdo exercise, work, spending, food, or preparation. Someone might advise you, don't overdo it on your first day back at the gym. Another useful phrase is, stick with it. This means, continue doing something even when it is difficult. You might say, the first couple of weeks were hard, but I'm trying to stick with it. Or you might encourage someone by saying, just stick with it, it'll get easier. Practice this complete response. I've been trying to get back into a healthier routine. I'm exercising a few times a week, going to bed earlier. And trying not to overdo it. It's still a work in progress, but so far I've been able to stick with it. The phrase, a work in progress, means something is not finished or perfect yet, but is gradually improving. You can use it for habits, projects, skills, and even personal development. Now, let's talk about learning English itself as part of daily life. Imagine someone asks, how's your English going? Instead of saying, it is improving, you could say, I think I'm making steady progress. I still hesitate sometimes when I speak, but I'm getting more comfortable expressing myself. Make steady progress means improve consistently over time. Get more comfortable means something is becoming easier and more natural for you. You might continue. The hardest part for me is keeping up with fast conversations. Keep up with means follow or remain at the same speed as something. You can say, I can understand the teacher, but it's hard to keep up with native speakers when they talk quickly. You can also keep up with work, news, technology, or responsibilities. Another learner might say, I understand a lot, but when I try to speak, my mind goes blank. My mind goes blank means you suddenly cannot think of what to say or remember something. This is common in stressful speaking situations. A useful strategy is to learn conversational phrases that give you a little thinking time. For example, let me think about that for a second. That's a good question. How should I put this? Or, I'm not sure how to explain it, but how should I put this is especially useful when you are trying to choose the right words. Imagine someone asks whether you enjoyed a movie. You might say, how should I put this? I didn't dislike it, but I probably wouldn't watch it again. This phrase gives you time while also sounding completely natural. Another expression is, what I'm trying to say is. This can help when your first explanation is unclear. For example, what I'm trying to say is that the job itself is fine, but the schedule is difficult. You can also say, let me put it another way. This means you will explain the same idea differently. These repair phrases are very important at B2 and C1 because advanced conversation does not mean speaking perfectly. It means knowing how to keep communicating even when you need to rephrase something. Let's practice. Imagine someone asks, why do you want to improve your English? You could answer, there are a few reasons. Mainly, I want to feel more confident communicating at work, and when I travel, I can usually understand what people are saying, but sometimes I struggle to respond quickly. What I'm trying to do now is make English feel more automatic instead of translating everything in my head. That answer uses simple vocabulary, but it sounds advanced because the ideas connect naturally. Now, try another version. For me, it's really about becoming more comfortable in real conversations. I don't expect to speak perfectly, but I want to be able to express myself clearly, keep up with other people, and handle unexpected situations without freezing. Notice that word handle. You can handle a situation, a problem, a responsibility, pressure, or a difficult conversation. I think I can handle it means you believe you are capable of dealing with something. This is a very useful daily life verb. Now, let's practice describing a busy week using many of today's expressions naturally. This week has been pretty hectic. I've been trying to stay on top of work, run a few errands, and get back into a regular exercise routine. I've also been meaning to organize my apartment, but I just haven't gotten to it yet. A friend invited me out this weekend. But I may pass this time because I feel like I've been running around non-stop. I think I need a quiet day to catch up on a few things and take it easy. Listen to how natural that sounds. None of the vocabulary is unnecessarily difficult, but the expressions create fluency. Now, imagine someone replies, sounds like you could use a break. Could use is a very natural way to say something would be helpful or desirable. I could use some coffee. I could use a day off. Or, this room could use a little more light. You might answer, definitely. I could use a day where I don't have anything scheduled. Here is another conversation to practice aloud. Any plans for Saturday? Nothing definite. I have a few errands to run, but I'm mostly playing it by ear. We might get together later if you're interested. I could be. Keep me posted and I'll see how my day goes. Sounds good. I'll text you once we figure out what we're doing. Repeat the exchange and pay attention to how the speakers avoid giving rigid yes or no answers. Real conversation often includes uncertainty, flexibility, and changing plans. Now, practice this workplace exchange. Do you have a minute to look at something? I'm a little tied up right now. Is it urgent? Not really. Whenever you get a chance is fine. Okay. I should be able to get to it after lunch. Perfect. Thanks. I appreciate it. Repeat it again and notice how polite language makes the conversation smooth without making it overly formal. Finally, Practice this short reflection aloud. The more I listen to real English, the more I notice that fluent speakers rely on useful phrases they can reuse in many different situations. They do not create every sentence from scratch. I can do the same thing. I can learn expressions such as, when you get a chance, I'm tied up right now, I'll get to it later, I'm playing it by ear, keep me posted, I've been meaning to, and I'm trying to stick with it. The more often I hear and repeat these phrases in complete situations, the more naturally they will come to me when I need them. Now, let's move into another major area of daily life English. Social conversations where you need to react naturally, share opinions, and keep the conversation moving without sounding rehearsed. At the B2 and C1 levels, one of the most useful skills is learning how to respond in a way that shows interest. If someone tells you something and you only say, okay, the conversation can stop very quickly. But natural speakers use small reactions such as, really? No way. That makes sense. I can imagine. That must have been frustrating. Good for you. I'm glad it worked out. These phrases are simple, but they help the other person feel that you are actually listening. Imagine a friend says, I finally finished that project I've been working on for the past month. You could respond, that's great. You must be relieved. The phrase you must be allows you to make a reasonable assumption about how someone feels. You must be exhausted. You must be excited. Or, you must be glad that's over. Your friend might answer, definitely, it took much longer than I expected. You could then say, I can imagine, you've been talking about it for weeks. I can imagine is a natural way to show understanding even if you did not personally experience the situation. Suppose a friend tells you, my flight was delayed for 6 hours, and then they lost my suitcase. You could say, that sounds like a nightmare. In everyday English, nightmare can describe an extremely difficult or frustrating situation, not just a bad dream. The commute was a nightmare this morning, or trying to get everything organized at the last minute was a nightmare. Another response could be, wow, what a mess. How did you deal with that? Notice that deal with means handle a problem or situation. Your friend might say, honestly, I just tried to stay calm. There wasn't much I could do. You can respond. That's probably the best way to handle it. The phrase, there wasn't much I could do, is useful when a situation is outside your control. You might say, the store was already closed, so there wasn't much I could do. Or, the weather changed suddenly, and there wasn't much we could do about it. Now, let's practice showing sympathy without becoming too dramatic. Imagine someone says, I didn't get the job. A natural response might be, I'm sorry to hear that. I know you were really hoping for it. You could then say, still, getting to the final interview is a good sign. Hopefully something else will come up. Come up, in this context, means become available or appear as an opportunity. You can say, a better opportunity may come up, or, if anything comes up, I'll let you know. If your friend says, yeah, I'm disappointed, but I'm trying not to dwell on it. The phrase, dwell on something, means think about a negative situation for too long. You could say, that's a good approach. There's no point dwelling on something you can't change. There's no point means there is no useful reason to do something. For example, there's no point arguing about it now, or there's no point worrying before we know what happened. Practice saying this complete response. I'm disappointed, but I'm trying not to dwell on it. I'll keep applying and see what comes up. This is a natural way to acknowledge a negative emotion while also showing that you are moving forward. Now, imagine the opposite situation. Your friend tells you, I got promoted. You could say, That's amazing. Congratulations. You've worked really hard for it. Another natural phrase is well-deserved. You might say, congratulations. That's well-deserved. This means you believe the person earned the positive result through effort or ability. You can use it for promotions, awards, recognition, or success. Your friend might say, thanks, I'm excited, but I'm also a little nervous about the extra responsibility. You could respond, that's understandable. I'm sure it'll take a little time to settle into the role. Settle into means become comfortable in a new situation, job, home, or routine. You might say, it took me a few weeks to settle into my new apartment, or I'm still settling into the new schedule. Let's move into conversations about opinions, because real-life English often requires you to say what you think without sounding too strong. Imagine someone asks, what did you think of the new restaurant? Instead of saying it was bad, you could say, it was okay, but I don't think it was worth the price. Another option is, I thought it was a little overrated. Overrated means something is considered better than you think it actually is. You might say, the movie was entertaining, but a little overrated. If you want to sound less direct, you can say, maybe it just wasn't my thing. Not my thing means something does not suit your taste or preference. For example, camping isn't really my thing. Or, I can see why people like that show, but it's not really my thing. This is useful because it presents an opinion as personal preference rather than universal truth. Now, imagine someone strongly disagrees with you. They say, really? I thought the restaurant was fantastic. You can respond, that's fair. I think I just had higher expectations. That's fair means you accept that the other person's opinion is reasonable. Another useful phrase is, I can see why you'd say that. This does not necessarily mean you agree. It means you understand their reasoning. Practice this exchange aloud. I thought the movie was a little slow. Really? I actually loved it. I can see why. The acting was great. I just thought the story dragged in the middle. The verb drag can mean something feels too slow or takes too long. The meeting really dragged this afternoon. Or, the first half of the movie dragged a little. Now, let's practice giving a balanced opinion. This is especially useful at the C1 level because advanced speakers often avoid overly simple judgments. Instead of saying, the job is good, you might say, there are things I really like about it. But there are also a few aspects I'm still adjusting to. Instead of saying, the city is bad, you could say, it has a lot to offer, but the cost of living can be difficult. The phrase, has a lot to offer, means there are many positive features or opportunities. Imagine someone asks, how do you like living in Chicago? You could say, overall, I really like it. There's always something going on. The food is great, and there are plenty of neighborhoods to explore. The only downside for me is the winter. It can be pretty intense. The phrase the only downside introduces a disadvantage. You can say, the apartment is great. The only downside is that it's a little far from work. Another useful phrase is, on the plus side. This introduces a positive aspect, often after mentioning something negative. For example, the commute is long, but on the plus side, I can work from home twice a week. Or, the apartment is small, but on the plus side, the rent is reasonable. Practice saying, the job can be stressful, but on the plus side, I really like the people I work with. Now, let's move into conversations about housing. Imagine a friend asks, how's the new apartment? You might say, so far, I like it. It's a little smaller than my old place, but the layout is better, and the neighborhood is much more convenient. Layout refers to the way rooms or spaces are arranged. Convenient means something makes daily life easier because of its location or accessibility. Your friend asks, how's the commute? You could answer, much better. It used to take me almost an hour to get to work. But now, it's about 25 minutes door to door. Door to door means from the moment you leave one place until you arrive at the destination. It is useful when talking about commuting or travel time. You might continue. There are also a couple of grocery stores within walking distance, which makes a big difference. Within walking distance means close enough to reach comfortably on foot. Another expression is makes a big difference. This means something has an important positive or negative effect. Having a shorter commute makes a big difference. Or, getting enough sleep really makes a difference in how I feel. Suppose there is a small problem with the apartment. You might say, the only issue so far is that the upstairs neighbors can be pretty loud at night. Your friend asks, have you talked to them? You say, not yet. I'm giving it a little time because I don't want to make a big deal out of it unless it keeps happening. Make a big deal out of something means treat something as more serious or important than necessary. You might say, it was an honest mistake. Don't make a big deal out of it. If the noise continues, you may need to address it. You could politely say, hi, I wanted to mention something. I've noticed there's been quite a bit of noise late at night lately. I completely understand that some noise is unavoidable, but would you mind keeping it down a little after 11? Keep it down means reduce noise. Notice how the speaker first explains the problem and acknowledges the other person before making the request. This helps the conversation sound respectful instead of confrontational. Now, let's move into conversations with neighbors. Imagine someone says, I think a package for you was delivered to my apartment by mistake. You could say, oh, thanks for letting me know. I was wondering where it went. I was wondering where it went means you had been confused about its location. The neighbor says, no problem. I left it inside so it wouldn't get taken. You respond, I really appreciate that. I'll come by and pick it up later. Pick something up is one of the most useful phrasal verbs in everyday English. You can pick up a package, groceries, medicine, food, or another person. I need to pick up my prescription after work. Can you pick me up at the airport? I'll pick up dinner on my way home. Practice using it in several contexts until it feels automatic. Now, suppose a neighbor asks you for a small favor. I'm going out of town for a couple of days. Would you mind keeping an eye on my packages? Keep an eye on means watch or monitor something. You might answer, of course, no problem at all. They say, thanks. I really appreciate it. This expression can also be used with children, pets, belongings, or situations. Could you keep an eye on my bag for a minute? Let's move into a very common situation. Talking about travel plans. Imagine a coworker asks, are you going anywhere this summer? You might say, I'm thinking about taking a few days off and going to Colorado. But nothing is set in stone yet. Set in stone means fixed and unlikely to change. If something is not set in stone, the plan is still flexible. You can say, the dates aren't set in stone, or we have a general plan, but nothing is set in stone. The coworker asks, are you planning to drive or fly? You answer, I'm leaning toward flying because I only have a few days, and I don't want to spend half the trip on the road. They might respond, that makes sense. You continue, I'm still comparing prices and trying to figure out what makes the most sense. Make the most sense means be the most reasonable or practical option. Now, imagine you have already booked the trip. Someone asks, is everything booked? You can say, pretty much. The flights and hotel are taken care of. I just need to rent a car. Taken care of means already handled or arranged. You could say, the reservations are taken care of, or don't worry about the tickets. They're already taken care of. Suppose your friend asks, "Do you usually plan everything in advance?" You might say, "I like to have the basics figured out. But I don't like planning every minute of the day. I prefer leaving some room for spontaneity." Leave room for means allow space, time, or possibility for something. You can say, "I leave room in my schedule for unexpected tasks," or try to leave room for flexibility. Now, let's practice talking about previous travel experiences. Imagine someone asks, "How was your trip to Seattle?" You could answer, "It was great overall. The weather was a little unpredictable, but we still managed to do everything we wanted." Manage to means succeed in doing something. Often, despite difficulty, we managed to catch the last train, or I managed to finish the report before the deadline. You might continue. "We had planned to spend one day outside the city, but it poured that morning, so we changed things around." Pour is an informal verb meaning rain very heavily. Change things around means rearrange plans or schedules. You could say, "We had to change a few things around because of the weather." Your friend asks, "Did that ruin the day?" You respond, "Not really. We made the most of it and found a couple of indoor things to do instead." Make the most of something means use a situation as positively or effectively as possible. You can say, "The weather wasn't great, but we made the most of it," or "I only had one free afternoon, so I tried to make the most of it." Practice saying this response, "The weather didn't cooperate, but we made the most of it and still had a really good time." "The weather didn't cooperate" is a natural, slightly playful way to say the weather was not suitable for your plans. Now, let's move into giving recommendations. Another essential daily life skill. Imagine someone asks, "Do you know a good place to get coffee around here?" You could say, "There's a small place a couple of blocks away that's definitely worth checking out." Worth checking out means worth visiting or trying. You can use it for restaurants, stores, neighborhoods, websites, movies, or events. You could continue. It can get crowded in the morning, though, so I'd go a little later if you can. Notice the word "though" at the end of the sentence. In conversation, though often introduces a contrast in a casual way. "The food was good. It was pretty expensive, though." Or, "I like the neighborhood. Parking can be difficult, though." Suppose someone asks, "What do you usually order there?" You might say, "I usually get their cold brew. But honestly, you can't really go wrong with anything on the menu." "You can't go wrong with" means almost any choice will be good. For example, "You can't go wrong with the chicken sandwich." Or, "If you're not sure what to order, you can't go wrong with the house special." Another recommendation phrase is, "If I were you, I'd." For example, "If I were you, I'd make a reservation because it gets busy on weekends." This can sound a little direct if used in sensitive situations, but it is very natural for practical advice. A softer version is, "You might want to make a reservation." "Might want to" is an excellent phrase for gentle advice. You might want to leave a little early because traffic gets bad after 5. Now, let's practice asking for advice. Imagine you tell a friend, "I'm thinking about getting a new laptop, but I don't know much about computers. What would you recommend?" They might answer, "It depends on what you need it for." "It depends on" is a very important phrase because many questions do not have one simple answer. You might say, "It depends on your budget." "It depends on how often you travel." Or, "It depends on what kind of work you do." You explain, "Mostly basic work. Video calls and some light editing. Nothing too demanding." Demanding can describe a task that requires a lot of effort, time, energy, or resources. The friend says, "In that case, you probably don't need anything too powerful. I'd focus on battery life and portability." Focus on means Give most of your attention to a particular factor. You might respond, "That's helpful. I tend to get distracted by all the specifications." Specifications, often shortened to specs, are detailed technical features. Your friend says, "Yeah, it's easy to overthink it." Overthink means think about something so much that it becomes unnecessarily complicated. This is a very useful modern conversational verb. I tend to overthink simple decisions. Or, try not to overthink your answer. Now, apply that expression to speaking English. Many learners know what they want to say, but overthink grammar before they open their mouths. You might tell yourself, "I don't need to overthink every sentence. I need to focus on communicating my meaning clearly." This does not mean grammar is unimportant. It means conversation happens in real time. And your goal is to keep moving. Here is a useful practice strategy. When you hear a question, do not immediately search for the most advanced answer possible. Start with a clear response, then add detail. For example, if someone asks, "Do you enjoy working from home?" Begin with, "For the most part, yes." Then add, "I like having more flexibility, and I save a lot of time because I don't have to commute." Then introduce balance. That said, "I do miss talking to people face to face sometimes." That said is a useful advanced connector, meaning despite what I just said. There is another point to consider. "I really like the apartment." That said, "The rent is higher than I'd like." Or, "Working from home is convenient." That said, it can be difficult to separate work from personal time. Another useful connector is "at the same time." Imagine you say, "I like having a flexible schedule. At the same time, I need some structure or I become less productive." This allows you to present two ideas that are both true, using connectors like overall, on the plus side, that said, at the same time, for the most part, and in that case makes your English sound organized and mature. Let's practice a longer opinion. Imagine someone asks, "Do you think social media is useful?" You could say, "I think it can be useful, depending on how you use it. It's a convenient way to stay in touch with people and discover information. That said, it's very easy to spend more time on it than you intended. I think the key is being aware of how much time you're spending and whether it's actually adding anything useful to your day." Notice that this response does not use extremely difficult vocabulary. What makes it sound advanced is the structure. You give an opinion, explain it, acknowledge another side, and finish with a conclusion. Practice doing this with everyday subjects: working from home, cooking at home, living in a big city, traveling alone, shopping online, exercising in the morning, or using technology. Now, let's work on conversations where you did not hear or understand something. This is one of the most important real-world skills. Advanced speakers do not pretend to understand everything. They know how to ask naturally for clarification. If you do not hear someone, instead of repeatedly saying, "What?" you can say, "Sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you say that again? Sorry, you cut out for a second. Could you repeat the last part?" If you hear the words but do not understand the meaning, say, "What do you mean by that?" Or, "Could you clarify what you mean?" A more conversational version is, "I'm not sure I follow." Follow here means understand someone's explanation or reasoning. You can say, "I'm with you so far, but I'm not sure I follow the last part." Suppose someone explains something complicated at work. You can say, "Just so I'm clear, you want me to finish the first draft today, but the final version isn't due until Friday. Is that right?" "Just so I'm clear" allows you to confirm your understanding. Another useful phrase is, "So basically, what you're saying is," then summarize what you understood. This is especially valuable in professional conversations because it prevents misunderstandings. Practice this exchange aloud. We're going to move the meeting to Thursday, but the deadline is staying the same. Okay, just so I'm clear. The meeting is Thursday, but you still need the report by Wednesday afternoon? Exactly. Got it. Thanks for clarifying. The phrase "thanks for clarifying" is useful when someone explains something more clearly. Now, imagine someone uses a word you do not know. You can ask, "What does that mean in this context?" Adding "in this context" is useful because many English words have several meanings. You could also say, "I've heard that expression before, but I'm not completely sure how it's used." This creates an opportunity to learn naturally within the conversation. Another helpful phrase is, "Do you mean?" For example, "Do you mean we should cancel the entire project or just delay it?" This lets you offer two possible interpretations. If someone corrects you, simply say, "Oh, got it. That makes more sense." Or, "Thanks. I misunderstood you." There is nothing wrong with asking for clarification. In fact, doing it effectively is a sign of strong communication skills. Now, let's practice talking about mistakes. Imagine someone says, "I sent the email to the wrong person." You could respond, "That's easy to do. Were you able to fix it?" "That's easy to do" means it is an understandable mistake. They answer, "Yeah. Fortunately, I noticed right away and followed up with an explanation." Follow up means take an additional action after an earlier communication or event. If you make a mistake yourself, you might say, "That was my mistake. I must have misunderstood the instructions." Or, "I completely overlooked that detail." Overlook means fail to notice something. You could say, "I overlooked one of the requirements." Or, "I'm sorry. I must have overlooked your message." Another useful phrase is "slip my mind." This means temporarily forget something. "I meant to call you, but it completely slipped my mind." Or, "I forgot about the appointment. It slipped my mind." Practice saying, "I'm sorry I didn't send that yesterday. It completely slipped my mind." If someone apologizes to you for a small mistake, natural responses include, "No worries. It happens." "Don't worry about it. No harm done." No harm done means the mistake did not cause serious damage. You might say, "You sent me the wrong file, but no harm done. I caught it before the meeting." Now, let's practice taking responsibility without over-apologizing. Imagine you are late sending something. You might say, "Sorry for the delay. I underestimated how long it would take. But I've finished it now." Underestimate means judge something as smaller, easier, cheaper, or faster than it actually is. You can underestimate time, cost, difficulty, or distance. "I underestimated how much traffic there would be." A stronger professional response is, "That was on me. I should have allowed more time." "That was on me" is an informal but common way to say you were responsible for something. You can say, "The scheduling mistake was on me." It shows accountability without giving a long excuse. Now, imagine a friend asks why you missed their call. You can say, "Sorry, I was in the middle of something and couldn't pick up." Be in the middle of something means be actively doing something. Pick up, in this context, means answer the phone. You can also say, "I saw your call, but I couldn't get away from what I was doing." Get away from can mean become temporarily free from a task or responsibility. The friend says, "No problem. I just wanted to ask you something." You could answer, "Sure, what's going on?" Again, notice how these small expressions make interaction feel natural. Now, let's continue with a few connected practice responses. Imagine someone asks, "How was your weekend?" You could say, "Pretty good overall. I didn't do anything major." I met a friend for lunch on Saturday, ran a few errands, and mostly took it easy. I had thought about going hiking on Sunday, but the weather didn't cooperate, so I ended up staying home and catching up on a few things. Now, imagine they say, "Honestly, that sounds nice." You respond, "It was. I feel like I've been running around so much lately that I needed a slower weekend." They ask, "Do you feel more rested now?" You say, "Definitely. It made a bigger difference than I expected." Here is another practice response. "How's the new job going?" "So far, so good. I'm still settling into the role, so there's a lot to learn, but everyone has been really helpful. The workload can be demanding at times, but overall it feels manageable. The biggest adjustment has probably been getting used to the schedule." And one more. "What did you think of the apartment you looked at?" "I liked it for the most part. The location was great. And the layout was better than I expected. That said, it was a little smaller than I'd like, and the rent was pretty high. I haven't made a decision yet, but I'm definitely considering it." Repeat those responses and notice how each one develops naturally. First, give the main answer, then provide 2 or 3 details. After that, add a contrast, result, or personal reaction. This simple pattern can transform your speaking because it gives your answers shape. Your English does not need to sound complicated to sound advanced. It needs to sound flexible, precise, and responsive. When someone shares news, react. When you give an opinion, explain it. When you disagree, soften it. When you are unsure, say so. When you do not understand, clarify. When you make a mistake, repair it and continue. These are the habits that make real conversation work. Practice this final sequence slowly and then at a more natural pace. "I didn't catch the last part. Could you say that again?" "Sure. I said the meeting has been pushed back until Thursday." "Okay. Just so I'm clear. The deadline is still Wednesday?" "Yes, that hasn't changed." "Got it. Thanks for clarifying." Now, another one. "How did the interview go?" "Pretty well, I think. I was nervous at first, but once the conversation got going, I settled down." "That's good. When will you hear back?" "They said sometime next week, so now, I just have to wait and see." Wait and see means avoid making assumptions until you have more information. You can say, "I'm not sure how it'll turn out. We'll just have to wait and see." And finally, say this aloud as a fluency reminder. "I don't need to know exactly what I'm going to say before I start speaking. I can begin with a clear idea, add detail, react to the other person, clarify when necessary, and adjust my words as I go." Real conversation is flexible, and I can learn to be flexible in English too. Now, let's move into conversations about time, priorities, and managing a busy schedule, because these are situations you deal with almost every day. Imagine a coworker asks, "Do you have time to meet this afternoon?" You might say, "Possibly. My schedule is pretty packed. But I could probably squeeze something in around 3. The phrase, "squeeze something in," means find a small amount of time for something even though your schedule is already busy. You can say, "I can squeeze in a quick call before lunch," or "I'm hoping to squeeze in a workout after work." This is a very natural expression when you are trying to make time for something. Suppose the coworker responds, "3 works for me. I only need about 15 minutes. You could say, "Perfect. Let's keep it brief because I have another meeting right after." Keep it brief means make something short. You might also hear, "I'll keep this brief," especially at the beginning of a meeting or explanation. If you need to leave at a specific time, you could say, "Just a heads up, I'll need to leave by 3:30. Heads up means advance notice or warning. For example, "Thanks for the heads up," or Just a heads up, traffic is really bad downtown today. Now, imagine someone asks you to meet at a time that does not work. Instead of simply saying, I can't, you could say, I'm afraid I'm tied up at that time. Would 4:30 work instead? I'm afraid does not necessarily mean you are scared. In polite communication, it can introduce disappointing information. I'm afraid I won't be able to make it. Or, I'm afraid we're fully booked this evening. This phrase sounds more formal than some of the expressions we have practiced. But it is still common in professional situations. If you want something more conversational, you might say, I'm booked around 2. Could we do later in the afternoon? Booked means your time is already scheduled. You can say, I'm pretty booked this week. Or, tomorrow morning is completely booked. Practice saying, my afternoon is pretty packed, but I might be able to squeeze in a quick meeting around 4. Now, let's talk about priorities. Imagine someone asks, are you going to finish everything today? You might answer, probably not. I'm going to focus on the most urgent things and leave the rest for tomorrow. Another natural response is, I'm just trying to prioritize what absolutely needs to get done today. Prioritize means decide what is most important and deal with that first. This is useful at work and in everyday life. You could say, I have a lot on my plate right now, so I'm trying to be realistic about what I can actually finish. Have a lot on your plate means have many responsibilities or problems to deal with. For example, I'd love to help, but I have a lot on my plate this week. This does not refer to food in this context. It refers to your workload or responsibilities. Imagine a friend says, you seem stressed lately. You might respond, I've just had a lot on my plate. Work has been busy, and I've had a few things to deal with at home, too. Your friend could say, make sure you're not taking on too much. Take on means accept responsibility for work or a task. You can take on a new project, take on more responsibilities, or take on too much at once. You might reply, yeah, I'm trying to get better at saying no when I don't have the capacity. The word capacity can mean the amount of time, energy, or ability you have available. In workplace English, you might hear, I don't have the capacity to take on another project right now. This is more professional than simply saying, I'm too busy. Now, let's move into conversations about procrastination and getting things done. Imagine someone says, I've been putting off cleaning out my garage for months. Put off means delay doing something. You can put off a task, an appointment, a decision, or even a conversation. You might say, I keep putting off making that phone call, or, we had to put off the trip until next month. You could respond, I know the feeling. Sometimes the longer you put something off, the harder it feels to start. I know the feeling means you understand because you have had a similar experience. This is a natural way to show empathy. The person might say, exactly. I think I just need to set aside a few hours and get it over with. Get it over with means complete something unpleasant so you no longer have to think about it. You could say, I hate going to the dentist, but I'd rather get it over with. Practice saying, I've been putting it off for weeks, so I'm just going to get it over with this weekend. This expression is especially useful for tasks you do not enjoy but know you need to complete. Now, imagine you start a task and realize it is much bigger than expected. You might say, I thought this would take an hour, but it's turning into a much bigger job than I expected. Turn into means become something different over time. For example, a quick conversation turned into a 2-hour meeting, or what started as a small repair turned into a major project. A friend says, do you want some help? You could respond, honestly, that would be great. I may have bitten off more than I can chew. Bite off more than you can chew means accept or attempt more than you can realistically handle. This is a very useful idiom. You might say, I thought I could manage 3 classes while working full-time, but I may have bitten off more than I can chew. Now, let's shift to conversations about technology in daily life. Imagine your phone suddenly stops working properly. You tell someone, my phone has been freezing all day, and it's driving me crazy. Freeze means a device stops responding temporarily. The phrase driving me crazy means something is extremely annoying or frustrating. You can say, this noise is driving me crazy, or the constant notifications are driving me crazy. Your friend asks, have you tried turning it off and back on? You say, yeah, that usually does the trick, but not this time. Do the trick means successfully solve a problem or achieve the desired result. For example, try restarting the computer. That usually does the trick. Or, a cup of coffee should do the trick. Suppose you eventually fix the phone by updating the software. You could say, apparently, I was several updates behind. Once I installed everything, it started working normally again. Be behind can mean not be up to date. You can be behind on work. Bills, messages, or software updates. I'm behind on emails means you have not responded to as many as you need to. Now, imagine a friend asks you for technical help. They say, I can't figure out how to connect this printer. You might say, let me take a look. I'm not an expert. But I might be able to figure it out. Take a look means examine something. Figure it out means understand or solve it. If you solve the problem, your friend says, how did you do that? You might respond, honestly, I just clicked around until something worked. Click around means explore different options by clicking them without a strict plan. If you cannot solve it, you can say, I'm stumped. I think we may need to look up the instructions. Stumped means unable to find an answer or solution. You could say, that question completely stumped me. It is a useful informal word when something is confusing. Now, let's practice conversations about deliveries and online orders. Imagine you are expecting a package, and someone asks, did your order arrive? You say, not yet. According to the tracking information, it was supposed to arrive yesterday, but it still says it's in transit. In transit means being transported from one place to another. You could continue, I'm going to give it another day before I contact the company. Your friend says, hopefully it's just delayed. You answer, that's what I'm hoping. It's not urgent, so I'm not too worried about it yet. If the package still does not arrive, you might contact customer service and say, hi, I'm following up on an order that was supposed to be delivered 2 days ago. The tracking hasn't updated. And I was wondering if you could check the status for me. Notice following up on. This means contacting someone again about something that has already been discussed or started. You can follow up on an application, an order, a request, an interview, or an email. For example, I'm just following up on the message I sent last week. The representative might say, let me look into that for you. Look into means investigate something. They could say, it appears the package was delayed at one of our distribution centers. You might ask, do you have any idea when I can expect it? This is a natural way to ask for an updated estimate. Suppose they say, it should arrive within the next 2 business days. You can respond, okay, that's helpful. I'll keep an eye on the tracking. Again, keep an eye on means monitor something. If the problem continues, you can follow up again. Now, let's move into dealing with misunderstandings in social situations. Imagine a friend says, I thought you were coming over tonight. You realize there has been confusion. You could say, oh, I think we got our wires crossed. I thought we said tomorrow. Get your wires crossed means misunderstand each other because of mixed communication. This is a useful idiom for scheduling confusion. Your friend says, I could have sworn we said tonight. Could have sworn means you felt very certain about something. Although you now realize you may have been wrong, you might say, I could have sworn I left my keys on the counter. Or, I could have sworn the appointment was at 3. You could respond, maybe I misunderstood. Either way, I'm sorry about the confusion. Either way means regardless of which explanation is correct, the result is the same. You can say, either way, we need to decide by tomorrow, or, I'm not sure who made the mistake, but either way, we should fix it. If you are still available, you might say, I can still come over if you want. I just need about half an hour. Your friend replies, no, that's okay. Tomorrow actually works better. You respond, perfect. Let's confirm tomorrow at 7, just so we're on the same page. Be on the same page means have the same understanding about a situation. This phrase is common both socially and professionally. At work, you might say, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page about the deadline. Or, before we move forward, let's make sure everyone is on the same page. Practice saying, just so we're on the same page. We're meeting at 7 tomorrow, not tonight. Now, let's talk about asking someone to explain themselves without making the conversation tense. Imagine a coworker says, I don't think this approach is going to work. Instead of reacting defensively, you could say, okay, can you walk me through your concerns? Walk someone through something means explain something step by step. You can walk someone through a process, a plan, a problem, or instructions. The coworker explains, and you say, I see your point. I hadn't considered that. I hadn't considered that means the idea had not occurred to you before. This is a strong response because it shows openness. You can then add, maybe we should rethink the timeline. Rethink means think about something again and possibly change your approach. Suppose you still disagree. You could say, I understand the concern, but I'm not sure we need to change the entire plan. Maybe there's a middle ground. Middle ground means a compromise between two positions. You could say, we disagree on the details, but I think we can find some middle ground. Another useful phrase is meet halfway. This means compromise by each side giving up something. If they can move the deadline, maybe we can meet them halfway on the price. Or in a personal situation, I'm willing to meet you halfway, but I can't completely change my schedule. Now, imagine you need to bring up a sensitive issue with a friend. You might say, there's something I wanted to talk to you about. It's not a huge deal, but I'd rather clear it up than let it bother me. Clear something up means resolve confusion or misunderstanding. You might also say, can we clear something up from yesterday? The friend responds, sure. What's going on? You explain. When you canceled at the last minute, I was a little frustrated because I had rearranged my schedule. I completely understand that things come up, but I would have appreciated a little more notice. This is a useful example of expressing frustration calmly. You describe what happened, explain how it affected you, and say what you would prefer in the future. Your friend might say, you're right. I should have told you sooner. That was my fault. You could respond, thanks. I appreciate you saying that. I just wanted to clear the air. Clear the air means discuss a problem openly so tension or misunderstanding goes away. For example, we had a disagreement yesterday, but we talked and cleared the air. Now, let's practice dealing with advice. Imagine you tell a friend, I'm thinking about changing jobs. They say, do you want my opinion? You respond, sure, I'm open to hearing it. Be open to means willing to consider something. You can be open to feedback, suggestions, change, or different possibilities. Your friend says, I think you should make sure you're leaving for the right reasons. Every job has problems. You could say, that's a fair point. I've been trying to figure out whether I'm just frustrated with a few temporary issues or whether it's really time for a change. Notice how natural speakers often describe uncertainty rather than pretending to have a final answer. Your friend might ask, what's pushing you toward leaving? Push someone toward means make someone more likely to choose a particular action. You answer, mostly the lack of growth. I feel like I've reached a point where I'm not learning much anymore. You could continue. At the same time, I like the people I work with, so it's not an easy decision. The friend says, maybe you don't need to decide right away. You could start looking around and see what's out there. Look around in this context means explore available options. See what's out there means discover what opportunities exist. You respond, that's probably what I'll do. I don't want to rush into anything. Rush into something means make an important decision too quickly. You can say, I don't want to rush into buying a house. Or, take your time. There's no need to rush into a decision. This phrase is useful whenever you discuss major choices. Now, let's move into talking about routines and productivity. Imagine someone asks, how do you stay organized? You might say, I try to plan my week in advance, but I keep the schedule flexible enough to handle unexpected things. You can continue. I also write down the 3 or 4 things I absolutely need to get done each day. Absolutely need to emphasizes priority. If someone says, I make long to-do lists, but then I never finish them, you might respond, I used to do the same thing. Eventually, I realized I was setting unrealistic expectations for myself. Eventually means after some time or after several attempts. Unrealistic expectations are standards or goals that are not reasonable. You might say, now I try to break bigger tasks down into smaller steps. Break something down means divide it into smaller, more manageable pieces. For example, the project feels overwhelming, so let's break it down into smaller tasks. This is also useful for language learning. Instead of saying, I want to become fluent, break the goal down into daily listening, speaking, vocabulary, and review. Another productivity phrase is knock something out. In informal American English, this means complete something, often quickly or efficiently. You might say, I'm going to knock out a few emails before lunch, or I want to knock out this report before I leave. This phrase is casual, so use it more with coworkers or friends than in very formal situations. Practice saying, I have a few small things to knock out this morning, and then I can focus on the bigger project this afternoon. Notice again how useful chunks allow you to speak smoothly. Now, imagine you have been working for several hours and someone says, you should take a break. You might answer, yeah, I'm starting to lose focus. I think I need to step away for a few minutes. Step away means leave something temporarily, often to rest or gain perspective. You can say, I've been staring at this problem too long. I'm going to step away and come back to it later. Another expression is clear my head. This means relax or think more clearly by taking a break. I'm going for a walk to clear my head. Or, sometimes I need a few minutes away from the screen to clear my head. This is natural English for everyday stress and decision-making. Now, let's practice talking about small successes. Imagine someone asks, did you finish everything you wanted to today? You might say, not everything, but I made a good dent in my list. Make a dent in means make noticeable progress on a large amount of work. You could say, I didn't finish cleaning the garage, but I made a pretty good dent in it. Another expression is make headway. This also means make progress. We're finally making some headway on the project. Make headway is slightly more formal than make a dent, but both are useful. Practice saying, I still have a lot to do, but at least I'm making headway. Now, let's combine several expressions in a natural conversation. Imagine a friend asks, "How's your week looking?" You say, "Pretty packed. Honestly, I have a lot on my plate at work, and I'm also trying to get a few things done around the house." Your friend asks, "Are you still free Thursday?" You answer, "I think so. My afternoon is booked, but I could probably squeeze something in after 6. They say, "No pressure, we can always do another day." You respond, "Let's play it by ear. I'll know more by Thursday morning." Now, another conversation. Did you ever call the insurance company? Not yet. I keep putting it off. You've been saying that for 2 weeks. I know. I'm going to do it today and get it over with. Probably a good idea. Yeah. Once it's done, I won't have to think about it anymore. Practice one more. Did your package show up? No. And the tracking hasn't updated in 3 days. Are you going to contact them? Yeah. I'm going to follow up this afternoon and ask them to look into it. Hopefully they can figure out what happened. I hope so. It's probably just delayed, but I'd rather check. Now, listen to this longer daily life response. This morning started out pretty smoothly, but then a few things came up. I had planned to knock out several tasks before lunch, but an unexpected meeting turned into a much longer discussion than I expected. That threw off my schedule, and I ended up having to move a couple of things to tomorrow. I was a little frustrated at first, but I decided to prioritize what really needed to get done and let the rest go. I still made some decent headway, so overall, it wasn't a bad day. Now, say a similar response aloud. I didn't get everything done today, but I made progress. A couple of unexpected things came up, and my schedule got thrown off. Instead of trying to do everything at once, I focused on the most important tasks and moved the rest to tomorrow. This kind of answer is very useful because it combines sequencing, explanation, and reflection. As your English improves, try to notice how often fluent speakers use phrases that describe managing change. Plans get pushed back, meetings run over, something comes up, you squeeze something in. You move things around, you prioritize, you follow up, you clear something up, you rethink a decision, you make the most of a situation. These phrases are powerful because daily life rarely goes exactly according to plan. Let's continue with a speaking exercise focused on flexibility. Repeat this slowly first. My schedule is pretty full today, but I may be able to squeeze in a quick call this afternoon. Now, repeat, I've got a lot on my plate, so I'm trying not to take on anything else right now. Now, I've been putting this off for too long, so I'm going to get it over with today. Now, I think we got our wires crossed, so let's make sure we're on the same page. Now, I don't want to rush into a decision. I'd rather look around and see what options are available. And now, practice a longer response at a natural pace. Things have been pretty busy lately, and I've had to adjust my schedule more than usual. I'm learning to prioritize what matters most, leave some room for unexpected problems, and avoid taking on more than I can realistically handle. If something has to wait until tomorrow, that's okay. The goal isn't to do everything perfectly. The goal is to stay organized, communicate clearly, and keep moving forward. This is also a useful mindset for your English. You do not need every sentence to be perfect. You need to keep communicating, adjust when necessary. Continue building confidence through real practice. Now, let's move into another important part of real-life English. Conversations where you need to explain experiences, give updates, and tell someone what has changed. Imagine a friend asks, "How have things been going at work lately?" You could say, "It's been a little unpredictable. We've had a few changes recently, so everyone is still adjusting." The word unpredictable means difficult to know in advance. You might say, "My schedule has been unpredictable lately," or "The weather has been really unpredictable this week." This word is useful because daily life does not always follow a fixed pattern. Your friend might ask, "What kind of changes?" You could respond, "We've had some people move into different roles, and the team has been reorganizing responsibilities." You can then add, "It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it has taken some getting used to." The phrase, "take some getting used to," means require time before something starts to feel normal or comfortable. For example, "Working from home took some getting used to," or "The new schedule is convenient, but it's taking some getting used to." Practice saying, "The change has been positive overall, but it has taken some getting used to." This phrase is useful for new jobs, new homes, routines, technology, relationships, or almost any change in daily life. Now, imagine someone asks about a new responsibility. You might say, "I've been handling more client calls lately, which was a little intimidating at first, but I'm getting the hang of it." Get the hang of something means gradually learn how to do it properly. You could say, "It took me a few days to get the hang of the new software," or "Once you get the hang of it, it's actually pretty easy." Another useful expression is pick something up. In addition to collecting something, pick up can mean learn something informally. For example, "I picked up a lot of useful phrases just by listening to coworkers." Or, "She picked up the new system really quickly." This is especially useful when talking about language learning. You can say, "I've picked up a lot of expressions from listening to real conversations." Now, let's move into telling stories about things that did not go according to plan. Imagine someone asks, "How was your day off?" You might say, "It didn't quite go the way I expected. I had planned to relax, but I ended up dealing with a plumbing issue at home." "Didn't quite go the way I expected" is a natural way to say the result was different from your plan. Your friend asks, "What happened?" You say, "I noticed water under the kitchen sink, and at first I thought it was something minor. It turned out there was a leak in one of the pipes." Turn out is another extremely useful expression. It means the final truth or result becomes known. For example, "I thought the meeting was canceled, but it turned out they had only changed the time." Or, "The restaurant looked expensive, but it turned out to be pretty reasonable." You continue, "I tried tightening one of the connections myself, but that didn't solve it, so I called a plumber." Your friend asks, "Did they fix it?" You answer, "Yeah. Fortunately, they were able to come out the same afternoon. It turned out to be a pretty simple repair." Notice how you can use "turn out" multiple times when telling a story because it naturally describes unexpected discoveries. Suppose the friend says, "At least it wasn't anything major." You reply, "Exactly. It could have been a lot worse." "It could have been worse" is a common phrase when something negative happens, but you recognize that the situation was not as serious as it might have been. You can say, "The repair was expensive, but it could have been worse." Now, let's practice talking about plans that almost failed. Imagine you say, "I almost missed my flight last weekend." Someone asks, "What happened?" You explain, "There was an accident on the highway, and traffic came to a complete stop. By the time I got to the airport, I was cutting it really close." Cut it close means leave very little time before a deadline or event. For example, "We made it to the meeting with 1 minute to spare. We really cut it close." You could continue, "I got through security and made it to the gate just as they were starting to board." The other person says, "That must have been stressful." You respond, "It was. I usually give myself plenty of time, so I'm not used to rushing like that. Give yourself plenty of time means intentionally allow extra time so you are not late. Now, practice this sequence. I was cutting it close, but I made it just in time. These two phrases often appear together. Cutting it close describes the risk, and just in time describes the successful result. Let's move into daily conversations about food and cooking. Imagine someone asks, "Do you cook much during the week?" You might say, "I try to, but it depends on how busy I am. If I have a long day, I'll usually make something quick or pick something up on the way home." Notice again that pick something up can mean buy or collect food. You might continue, "I usually cook a few bigger meals on Sunday, so I don't have to start from scratch every evening." Start from scratch means begin completely from the beginning without using anything already prepared. You can use this outside cooking too. "We lost the file and had to start from scratch." Or, "They redesigned the project from scratch." Suppose someone says, "That sounds organized." You could reply, "It helps. Otherwise, I end up ordering takeout more often than I'd like." More often than I'd like is a natural phrase when something happens more frequently than you prefer. You might say, "I've been staying late at work more often than I'd like," or "I check my phone more often than I'd like." Now, imagine you are cooking and realize you are missing an ingredient. You might say, "I was halfway through making dinner when I realized I was out of olive oil." Be out of something means have none left. You can be out of milk, coffee, batteries, printer paper, or money. You might ask someone, "We're out of coffee. Can you pick some up tomorrow?" A friend says, "What did you do?" You answer, "I improvised and used something else instead." Improvise means create a solution using what is available rather than following the original plan. It is a useful C1 level word in everyday situations. You might say, "We didn't have all the equipment we needed, so we had to improvise." Now, let's move into conversations about trying something for the first time. Imagine someone asks, "Have you ever tried making bread at home?" You say, "A couple of times. My first attempt was a complete disaster, but I eventually figured it out." Attempt means an effort to do something, and figure it out means successfully understand or solve it. The person asks, "Was it difficult?" You might answer, "The basic process wasn't too difficult, but getting the timing right took some practice." Get something right means do something correctly. You can say, "It took me a while to get the pronunciation right," or "I'm still trying to get the settings right." Another useful phrase is trial and error. This means learning by trying different methods, making mistakes, and adjusting. You could say, "Honestly, it was mostly trial and error." This phrase works for cooking, technology, learning a new skill, or solving problems. I learned the software through trial and error. Now, practice this response. "At first, I had no idea what I was doing, but after a little trial and error, I started getting the hang of it." This is a very natural way to describe learning. Let's move into social situations where you meet someone you have not seen in a while. Imagine someone says, "Wow, it's been forever. How have you been?" "It's been forever" is an exaggerated casual way to say a long time has passed. You could respond, "I know. It's been way too long. I've been good. How about you?" The person says, "Pretty good. A lot has changed since we last talked." You might say, "Really? Fill me in." Fill me in means, give me the important information I have missed. This is very common. You can say, "I missed the meeting. Can you fill me in?" Or, "You'll have to fill me in on what happened." They say, "Well, I moved, started a new job, and got a dog." You might respond, "Wow, you weren't kidding. That is a lot." The phrase "you weren't kidding" means the other person's statement was completely true, often more than you expected. You ask, "How are you liking the new job?" They answer, "So far, I really like it. The first few weeks were overwhelming, but I'm starting to settle in." Overwhelming means something feels difficult because there is too much to handle at once. This word is useful for work, study, travel, moving, or busy periods. You could say, "That's good. Starting somewhere new can definitely be overwhelming." Again, notice the natural reaction. Instead of moving straight to another question, acknowledge what the person said. Now, imagine you are the person giving the update. You might say, "Honestly, the past few months have been a bit of a whirlwind." Whirlwind can describe a period when many things happen very quickly. For example, "The first month at my new job was a whirlwind." This is expressive but still common in conversation. You continue, "I moved at the beginning of June, started the new job 2 weeks later, and I feel like I've been trying to catch my breath ever since." Catch your breath literally means recover normal breathing, but figuratively, it can mean have a chance to relax after a busy period. You could say, "Things have finally slowed down enough for me to catch my breath." Now, let's practice keeping a conversation going when someone shares an experience. If someone says, "I just moved into a new apartment," possible follow-up questions include, "How are you liking it so far? Was the move stressful? How's the neighborhood? Are you all unpacked?" The phrase "all unpacked" means completely finished unpacking your belongings. Suppose they say, "Mostly, I still have a few boxes I haven't gotten around to." Get around to something means finally find time to do something you have been intending to do. For example, "I still haven't gotten around to cleaning the garage," or "I've been meaning to read that book, but I haven't gotten around to it." This is a useful expression because it combines naturally with "I've been meaning to." You can say, "I've been meaning to organize those files, but I haven't gotten around to it yet." Now, let's move into communication at work when someone needs an update. Imagine a manager asks, "Where are we on the client proposal?" A natural response might be, "We're in pretty good shape. The main sections are done, and I'm just waiting on a couple of numbers before I can finalize it." In good shape means progressing well or in a satisfactory condition. The manager asks, "Do you think we're still on track for Friday?" On track means progressing according to plan and likely to meet the deadline. You could answer, "Yes, I think so. As long as I get the remaining information by tomorrow morning, we should be on track." The manager says, "Let me know if anything changes." You respond, "Absolutely, I'll keep you posted." Notice how expressions from earlier sections return naturally. The goal is not to learn a phrase once and forget it. The goal is to reuse it across many contexts. Suppose there is a delay. You might say, "We've hit a bit of a snag." Hit a snag means encounter an unexpected problem. For example, "The project was going smoothly, but we hit a snag with the software." This expression is common in professional and everyday settings. Your manager asks, "What's the issue?" You explain, "We're still waiting for some information from the client, and without it, we can't finish the last section." Then add, "I've followed up twice, so hopefully we'll hear back soon." Hear back means receive a response. You can say, "I applied last week, but I haven't heard back yet." Now, practice this workplace response. "We're mostly on track, but we've hit a small snag. I'm waiting for one piece of information, and I've already followed up. As soon as I hear back, I should be able to finish everything." This is clear, professional, and natural. Let's move into conversations about decisions you changed your mind about. Imagine a friend asks, "I thought you were going to buy that car. What happened?" You could say, "I was going to, but I had second thoughts." Have second thoughts means begin doubting a decision you were previously ready to make. You might continue. Once I looked at the total cost, I realized it didn't make as much sense as I initially thought. Initially means at first. Your friend asks, "So are you going to keep looking?" You respond, "Probably, I'm in no hurry, so I'd rather wait until I find something that feels right." Another phrase is, change my mind. For example, I changed my mind about moving, or I was going to order the pasta, but I changed my mind. A more nuanced version is, I'm starting to reconsider. Reconsider means think again about a previous decision or opinion. Suppose someone asks, "Why are you reconsidering?" You say, "The more I think about it, the more I realize I don't really need it right now." This structure, the more I think about it, the more is excellent for advanced conversation. For example, the more I think about the job offer, the more interested I am. Or, the more I use the new software, the easier it gets. Practice saying, the more I think about it, the more I feel like waiting is probably the better option. This allows you to explain a changing opinion naturally. Now, let's talk about handling compliments. Imagine someone says, "Your English has improved a lot." Instead of rejecting the compliment by saying, "No, my English is bad," try responding naturally. You could say, "Thank you. I've been working on it a lot lately." Or, "Thanks. I appreciate that. I'm definitely feeling more confident than I used to." If someone says, "You handled that presentation really well," you could answer, "Thanks. I was pretty nervous beforehand, so I'm glad it came across well." Come across can describe the impression something gives. You can say, "I hope I didn't come across as rude," or, "She comes across as very confident." Now, imagine someone says, "You always seem so organized." You might respond, "Thanks. Although I definitely don't feel organized all the time." This is a modest but natural response. You can accept a compliment without either bragging or rejecting it. Now, let's practice making compliments more natural. Instead of simply saying, "Your presentation was good," you can say, "I thought you explained everything really clearly," or, "You did a great job keeping it concise." Specific compliments often sound more sincere. In a social setting, you might say, "I really like your jacket. Where did you get it?" Or, "This dinner is amazing. Did you make everything yourself?" The other person might say, "Thanks, but it was actually pretty easy." You could respond, "Well, it turned out great." Now, let's move into conversations where you need to make a suggestion without sounding controlling. Imagine a friend says, "I'm exhausted, but I still have a lot to do tonight." You could say, "Maybe you should call it a night and finish the rest tomorrow." Call it a night means stop doing activities for the evening and rest or go to bed. The friend says, "I probably should, but I'm behind on a few things." You reply, "You might be more productive tomorrow if you get some rest." Notice the use of might. It makes the suggestion less forceful. Another useful phrase is, "It might be worth," for example, "It might be worth taking a short break and coming back to it." Or, "It might be worth calling the company again." This structure is excellent for advice because it sounds thoughtful rather than commanding. Now, imagine a friend is deciding whether to take a course. You could say, "If it fits your schedule, it might be worth trying." They ask, "What if I don't like it?" You respond, "Then at least you'll know you can always stop if it's not a good fit." A good fit means suitable for a person or situation. You can say, "The job sounded interesting, but it wasn't a good fit for me." Or, "I'm looking for an apartment that's a better fit for my needs." Now, let's practice expressing uncertainty in a natural way. Imagine someone asks, "Do you think the event will be crowded?" Instead of only saying, I don't know, you could say, "It's hard to say. It usually gets pretty busy, but since the weather isn't great, it might be quieter than usual." It's hard to say means you cannot confidently predict the answer. Another option is, "Your guess is as good as mine." This is informal and means you do not know any more than the other person. For example, "When will they finish the construction? Your guess is as good as mine." You could also say, "I wouldn't be surprised if." This means something is reasonably possible. "I wouldn't be surprised if the meeting ran late." Or, "I wouldn't be surprised if prices went up again." This is useful for predictions based on experience. Practice saying, "It's hard to say, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was busier than usual." Notice how this communicates uncertainty with much more nuance than a simple, "I don't know." Now, let's work on one of the most useful conversation skills at B2 and C1, telling a short story without getting lost in unnecessary details. A good daily life story usually has a simple structure. Give the background, explain what happened, mention the unexpected part, and finish with the result or your reaction. Imagine someone asks, "Why were you late this morning?" You could say, "I left home at my usual time, but about halfway to work. I realized I had forgotten my laptop. I had to turn around and go back for it, which set me back about 20 minutes. Then I hit traffic. So by the time I got to the office, I was almost half an hour late. It was completely my own fault, but it definitely wasn't how I wanted to start the day." Notice how clear that story is. You understand the original plan, the problem, the consequence, and the reaction. You do not need dozens of details. Here is another example. "Yesterday I stopped at the grocery store after work because I only needed a couple of things. The store was much busier than usual, and one of the checkout systems went down. I ended up standing in line for almost 30 minutes. By the time I got home, I was too tired to cook, so I ordered dinner instead. I went in for a 5-minute errand and somehow turned it into an hour-long trip." This last sentence adds personality and humor. Natural conversation is not only about accurate information, it is also about the way you frame the experience. Now, practice telling a positive story. "I went for a walk Saturday morning and happened to run into an old coworker I hadn't seen in years." Run into someone means meet someone unexpectedly. You continue, "We ended up grabbing coffee and catching up for almost 2 hours. I had no plans to see anyone that day, so it was a really nice surprise." Catch up can mean finish delayed work, but when used with people, it means talk about what has happened since you last saw each other. "We should catch up sometime." Or, "I had lunch with an old friend and we caught up." Now, let's practice a longer social exchange. "What did you do this weekend?" "Nothing too exciting. But I actually ran into an old friend on Saturday." "Really? Where?" "At a coffee shop downtown. We hadn't seen each other in probably 3 years." "Wow. Did you get a chance to catch up?" "Yeah. We ended up sitting there for almost 2 hours. It was really nice." That sounds like a great surprise. It was. I'm glad I happened to be there at the same time. Now, another exchange. "How's the new project going?" "Pretty well overall. It took us a little time to get the hang of the new system, but things are moving more smoothly now." "Are you still on track for the deadline?" "Mostly. We hit a small snag earlier this week, but I think we've worked through it." "That's good." "Yeah, as long as nothing unexpected comes up, we should be fine." Practice one more. "Did you end up buying that laptop?" "No, I had second thoughts." "What changed your mind?" "The more I looked into it, the more I realized I was paying for features I probably wouldn't use." "So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to keep looking. I'm in no hurry." Now, say these useful phrases again. It took some getting used to. I'm starting to get the hang of it. It turned out to be easier than I expected. I was cutting it close. I had second thoughts. I haven't gotten around to it yet. We hit a small snag. I'm waiting to hear back. It might be worth trying. It's hard to say. I happened to run into an old friend. As you repeat these expressions, do not treat them as isolated vocabulary. Imagine a real situation for each one. Think of something in your own life that took some getting used to. Think of a skill you are getting the hang of. Think of a time something turned out differently than expected. Think of something you have been meaning to do, but have not gotten around to yet. Connecting language to real situations makes it much easier to remember and use naturally. Now, try this longer fluency practice aloud. A few months ago, I started changing some of my daily routines. At first, it took some getting used to, because I had been doing things the same way for years. I started planning my week more carefully, preparing meals in advance, and setting aside specific time for exercise and English practice. I didn't get everything right immediately. There was a lot of trial and error, and some weeks went better than others. But gradually, I started getting the hang of it. The more consistent I became, the easier the routine felt. Continue with this response. One thing I've learned is that I don't need everything to go perfectly for a day to be productive. Sometimes unexpected problems come up. I may hit a snag, run late, forget something, or have to change my plans. What matters is being able to adjust. I can figure out what needs attention, deal with it, and move on. Now, apply the same idea to English. I may not understand every word in a conversation. I may forget an expression or need to ask someone to repeat something. I may start a sentence and then realize I want to say it differently. That is normal. I can clarify, rephrase, ask questions, and keep going. The more real conversations I practice, the more comfortable I become with the unexpected. The ability to handle unexpected moments is one of the clearest signs of conversational fluency. You cannot memorize every conversation you will ever have. But you can build a flexible collection of phrases and habits that help you respond. You can say, "Let me think about that." You can say, "I'm not sure I follow." You can say, "What I'm trying to say is." You can say, "It depends." You can say, "I hadn't thought of that." You can say, "Give me a second." These phrases create space for you to think while keeping the conversation alive. Practice this final response at a natural pace. For me, improving my English is not about sounding perfect all the time. It is about becoming more flexible. I want to understand what people mean, react naturally, explain myself clearly, and stay calm if I need a moment to think. I want useful expressions to come to me more quickly because I have heard them and practiced them in real situations. That is what makes everyday English feel natural. And one more time, with confidence, I do not have to translate every sentence in my head. I can listen for the main idea, respond with language I already know, add detail, and adjust as the conversation develops. If I make a mistake, I can correct it. If I do not understand, I can ask. If I need time, I can take a moment. Every real conversation is another chance to become more fluent. Now, let's bring everything together with more realistic daily life conversations that require you to move between different skills naturally. Imagine you are meeting a friend after a busy week, and they ask, "How have you been holding up?" The phrase hold up can mean manage or cope during a difficult or demanding period. You might answer, "Pretty well. All things considered, work has been hectic, and I've had a few things going on at home, but I'm managing." All things considered means when you think about the whole situation, including both positive and negative factors, you could say, "The trip was tiring, but all things considered, it went really well." Your friend says, "You sound like you've had a lot on your plate." You could respond, I have, but things are finally starting to ease up. Ease up means become less intense, difficult, or busy. For example, work should ease up after this week, or traffic usually eases up after 7. This is useful when you want to describe a stressful period becoming more manageable. Your friend asks, "Are you getting any time to yourself?" You might say, "A little. I've been making more of an effort to protect my evenings instead of automatically saying yes to everything." The phrase, make an effort, means intentionally try to do something. You can say, "I'm making an effort to cook more often," or "I'm trying to make more of an effort to stay in touch with people." Suppose your friend says, "That's probably a good idea. It's easy to burn yourself out." Burn yourself out means become physically or mentally exhausted from doing too much for too long. You might respond, "Exactly, I'm trying to pace myself." Pace yourself means control the speed or amount of effort you use so you do not become exhausted too quickly. This phrase is useful for work, exercise, studying, long projects, and language learning. Practice saying, "I have a lot going on, but I'm trying to pace myself instead of doing everything at once." This is a natural way to talk about balancing responsibilities. Now, imagine you are speaking with a coworker about a difficult week. They say, "I feel like every time I finish one thing, 3 more things show up." You could respond, "I know exactly what you mean. It feels never-ending sometimes." Never-ending means seeming to continue without stopping. The coworker says, "I'm just trying to get through Friday." You might say, "Same here. Once we get this deadline behind us, things should calm down." Get something behind you means finish a difficult event or responsibility so you no longer have to worry about it. You can say, "I'll feel better once I get the presentation behind me," or "Once we get the move behind us." We can relax. Now, let's practice responding when someone asks for an honest opinion. Imagine your friend says, "Be honest. Do you think I should move to a new apartment?" You could answer, "I think it depends on what's bothering you about your current place. If it's something temporary, moving might be more trouble than it's worth. But if the location or cost really isn't working for you anymore, then it may be worth looking at other options." The phrase, "more trouble than it's worth," means something requires more effort, difficulty, or cost than the benefit it provides. You could say, "Driving downtown during rush hour is more trouble than it's worth," or "Fixing this old computer might be more trouble than it's worth." Your friend says, "The biggest issue is the commute. I'm spending almost 2 hours a day in the car." You might respond, "In that case, I can see why you're considering it. That much commuting can really wear you down." Wear someone down means gradually make someone tired, stressed, or less energetic. For example, "The long hours are starting to wear me down." You could continue, "Maybe start looking without putting pressure on yourself to move immediately. If something better comes along, then you can decide." Come along can mean appear or become available. You might say, "I wasn't planning to change jobs, but a great opportunity came along." Now, let's practice another common situation. Someone asks why you changed a plan. Imagine a friend says, "I thought you were going to take a trip next month." You answer, "I was, but I decided to hold off for a little while." Hold off means delay doing something. You could say, "I'm going to hold off on buying a new phone," or "We decided to hold off until we had more information." Your friend asks, "Any particular reason?" You could say, "Mostly because a few unexpected expenses came up, and I'd rather not stretch my budget too thin." Stretch something too thin means use limited resources, such as money, time, or energy, across too many needs. You can say, "I don't want to stretch myself too thin by taking on too many projects." Your friend says, "That makes sense. the trip will still be there later. You respond, exactly. I'd rather enjoy it when I can actually afford to relax instead of worrying about money the whole time. Notice how this response clearly explains a decision without sounding defensive. Now, let's practice handling a problem at a cafe. Imagine you order a drink, but after waiting 20 minutes, it still has not arrived. You walk to the counter and say, "Hi, I just wanted to check on my order. I ordered about 20 minutes ago, and I'm not sure if it may have gotten missed. I just wanted to check on" is a polite way to ask for an update without immediately complaining. The employee says, "I'm really sorry. It looks like the order didn't go through." You respond, "No worries. I just wanted to make sure it hadn't been forgotten." The employee says, "We'll make it right away." You could say, "Thanks. I appreciate it." Now, imagine the opposite. You realize the mistake was yours. Maybe you were standing in the wrong pickup area. You could say, "Oh, that was my mistake. I didn't realize orders were being picked up on the other side." The employee says, "No problem at all." You respond, "Thanks. I completely missed the sign." Being able to admit small mistakes casually is part of natural communication. You do not need a long apology every time. Expressions such as, "My mistake," "That was on me," "I completely missed that," or "I misunderstood," are often enough. Now, let's move into everyday conversations about plans that are still uncertain. Imagine someone asks, "What are you doing for the holiday weekend?" You might say, "Nothing is finalized yet. We're tossing around a few ideas." Toss around ideas means discuss different possibilities informally. You could say, "We've been tossing around the idea of renting a cabin," or "We're tossing around a few options for dinner." Your friend asks, "What are you leaning toward?" You answer, "Probably something low-key. I don't really feel like dealing with huge crowds." Low-key means relaxed, simple, and not overly exciting or formal. You can say, "We had a low-key weekend," or "I'm in the mood for something low-key tonight." Suppose they say, "A quiet weekend actually sounds pretty good." You respond, "That's what I'm thinking. I've been so busy lately that I don't feel the need to pack every free day with activities." Pack something with means fill it with many things. You can say, "We packed the weekend with activities," or "My schedule is packed with meetings." Now, imagine talking about a new habit. Someone asks, "Are you still going for a walk every morning?" You answer, "Most days, yes. I've managed to keep it up for about a month now." Keep something up means continue doing something successfully. You can say, "You've made great progress. Keep it up," or "I'm trying to keep up the habit." The person says, "Do you notice a difference?" You might respond, "Definitely. It helps me wake up, clear my head, and start the day without immediately looking at my phone." They ask, "Was it hard to get started?" You say, "The first week was, I had to force myself a little, but now it's starting to feel like second nature." Second nature means something has become so familiar that you can do it automatically. You might say, "After driving that route every day, it became second nature." Or, "With enough practice, these phrases will start to feel like second nature." That is exactly what we want with your English. At first, expressions such as, "I'll get back to you," "I'm leaning toward," "Something came up," or "I'll keep you posted," may require conscious thought. But after you hear them, repeat them, and use them enough times, they begin to feel automatic. Let's practice a longer conversation response using many of the patterns you have learned. Imagine someone asks, "How's everything going lately?" You could say, "Overall, pretty well. Work has been busy, but things are starting to ease up. I've also been trying to get back into a better routine outside of work." I've been exercising more consistently, cooking at home, and making an effort not to overbook my weekends. I still have days where everything feels all over the place, but I think I'm getting better at prioritizing and not letting small problems throw off my whole day. Now, imagine they respond, "Sounds like you've made some good changes." You say, "I think so. None of it happened overnight, though it's mostly been trial and error. I've had to figure out what actually works for me instead of trying to follow some perfect routine." Overnight in this context means immediately or in a very short period. You might say, "Fluency doesn't happen overnight," or "The problem isn't going to disappear overnight." Now, practice this sentence. Improvement doesn't happen overnight, but small changes add up when you stick with them. This is useful not only for English, but for almost any skill. Let's do another extended practice situation. Imagine you are telling someone about a problem that was eventually solved. You could say, "I had an issue with my phone bill last week. I noticed I had been charged twice for the same service, so I called customer support. At first, they couldn't figure out what had happened, and I was transferred to another department. I had to explain the situation again, which was a little frustrating, but eventually they found the mistake. They reversed the extra charge and told me it should disappear from my account within a few business days. It took longer than I expected, but at least everything worked out in the end." Notice, in the end. This means finally. After everything that happened, you can say, "The day was stressful, but everything worked out in the end." Compare that with "at the end," which usually refers to the final physical or chronological point of something. "At the end of the movie" is different from "in the end, they decided not to go." Now, practice retelling the same situation more casually. "I got charged twice on my phone bill, so I had to call customer service. It took a while to sort out, but they eventually fixed it and refunded the extra charge." Sort something out means resolve a problem or organize a confusing situation. You might say, "We had a scheduling problem, but we sorted it out." Now, imagine a friend says, "I hate making those kinds of calls." You could respond, "Same here, but sometimes you just have to deal with it." They say, "True, at least they fixed it." You answer, "Exactly. It was annoying, but no harm done in the end." Now, let's focus on one more crucial advanced skill: expressing yourself when you are not completely certain. Real conversations contain uncertainty all the time. Instead of saying something too confidently when you do not know, you can say, "As far as I know." For example, "As far as I know, the store is open until 9. This means, based on the information you currently have. You can also say, "From what I understand." For example, "From what I understand, the deadline has been moved to Monday." This is useful when you are reporting information you received from someone else. Another phrase is, "I could be wrong, but..." You might say, "I could be wrong, but I think they changed the policy recently." This makes your uncertainty clear and gives the other person room to correct you. Practice saying, "As far as I know, nothing has changed, but I can double check." Now, "From what I understand, we're still meeting at the same time." And, "I could be wrong, but I think there's another entrance around the back." These phrases are useful because strong communication is not about pretending to know everything. It is about accurately showing how certain you are. Now practice this final set of everyday responses aloud. "I'm not completely sure, but I can look into it. Let me double check and get back to you. As far as I know, we're still on schedule. Something came up, so I may need to push it back. I'm leaning toward waiting a little longer. It took some getting used to, but I'm getting the hang of it. I haven't gotten around to it yet. We hit a snag, but we managed to sort it out. I'm trying not to stretch myself too thin. Things are finally starting to ease up. Now, take a moment to practice a longer answer without stopping after every sentence. Say, "My English has improved because I'm paying more attention to how people actually communicate. I'm not only learning individual words, I'm learning complete expressions that I can reuse in many situations. When I make plans, I know how to say that something is still up in the air or not set in stone. When I'm busy, I can say that I have a lot on my plate. When something changes unexpectedly, I can explain that something came up or that my schedule got thrown off. When I need clarification, I can ask someone to explain what they mean. And when I need time to think, I can use natural phrases that keep the conversation moving." Now, continue. The more I practice this way, the less pressure I feel to create perfect sentences. I can focus more on the message. I can respond to the other person instead of only thinking about myself. I can listen for useful phrases, react naturally, and build my answer one idea at a time. If someone asks you a simple question such as, "How was your day?" you now have many ways to respond. You could say, "Pretty good overall. It was busy, but manageable." You could say, "Honestly, it was a little hectic. One thing after another kept coming up." You could say, "Not bad. My schedule got thrown off this morning, but I managed to catch up later." You could say, "It was actually really productive. I knocked out several things I'd been putting off." If someone asks, "What are you doing this weekend?" you can say, "Nothing is set in stone. I'm playing it by ear." You can say, "I have a few errands to run, but otherwise I'm keeping the weekend pretty open." You can say, "A few friends may get together, but we haven't figured out the details yet." If someone asks, "How's work going?" you can say, "Pretty well. I have a lot on my plate at the moment, but I'm staying on top of it." You can say, "It's been hectic, but things are starting to settle down." You can say, "We hit a small snag earlier this week, but I think we've sorted it out." These are not sentences you need to memorize as fixed answers. They are building blocks. Change the details, combine the expressions, use them to describe your own life. Practice one last connected response. "This week has been busy, but overall it has gone pretty well. A few unexpected things came up, and I had to move my schedule around. But I managed to stay on top of the most important tasks. I still have a couple of things I haven't gotten around to, but I'm not going to stress about them. I'll take care of them when I get a chance. For now, I'm glad I made progress." Now, say, "I'm learning to speak English the same way. I don't need to rush. I don't need to overthink every word. I can focus on communicating clearly." Use the expressions I know and keep building from there. If I forget a word, I can explain the idea another way. If I misunderstand something, I can ask for clarification. If I make a mistake, I can correct myself and continue. The conversation does not have to stop. The most valuable English is the English you can actually use when you need it. A phrase becomes useful when it helps you solve a problem, make a plan, express an opinion, explain a situation, connect with another person, or simply continue a conversation without freezing. Keep practicing complete ideas, keep listening for natural patterns, and keep noticing how ordinary words combine to create fluent, everyday English. The next time you speak English, focus on one simple goal. Stay in the conversation, listen carefully, respond to the main idea, add a little detail, and use the phrases that already feel familiar. If you need clarification, ask for it. If you need a moment, take it. If you need to rephrase, do it. The more often you practice communicating this way, the more natural English will begin to feel, and the expressions you practice today will gradually become part of the way you speak. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of this B2C1 Daily Life Real English Conversations Practice Masterclass. I hope today's lesson helped you feel more confident understanding natural English, expressing your ideas clearly, and responding more comfortably in real-life situations. Remember, fluency does not come from memorizing difficult words or trying to speak perfectly every time. It comes from listening regularly, practicing complete phrases, noticing natural sentence patterns, and using English again and again in situations that feel real to you. If some of today's expressions were new, come back to this lesson and practice them again. Listen carefully, repeat the sentences aloud, and try using the phrases to talk about your own daily life. The more often you practice this way, the more automatic your English will become, and the less time you will need to spend translating in your head before you speak. If you enjoyed this masterclass and found it useful, make sure to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you do not miss our upcoming English learning lessons. You can also leave a comment and tell me which expression or conversation from today's lesson was the most useful for you. Your comments are a great way to practice writing in English and become more confident using the language. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep practicing English every day. Even a little practice can make a big difference when you stay consistent. Thank you again for learning with me today. I'm Emma, and I'll see you in the next English lesson. Until then, take care, keep practicing, and keep moving forward with your English. Bye for now.